Hello, everyone. The economic survey is one of the important documents for UPSC relevant for both prelims and mains examination. And every year you can expect around 3 to 4 questions directly or indirectly from it. However, the survey is not written specifically for UPSC aspirants. So it's a 700 page plus document which is dense, detailed, and not entirely exam oriented. Now, with the exam approaching, I understand that it is simply not practical to read it cover to cover. So, on your behalf, I have gone through the each chapter line by line, and I have tried to create a concise exam focused summary. So you can download that from the link below. Now, on top of that, I've also created 113 multiple choice questions to cover it from a prelims perspective. And in this video, we'll go through these questions together. So let's get started. Let's start with the first chapter, State of the Economy. Question 1 is consider the following statements regarding economic statecraft. Economic statecraft employs economic tools exclusively to achieve economic objectives such as controlling inflation and reducing fiscal deficit. So this in fact is an incorrect statement. जो economic statecraft होता है, as is given in your economic survey. Now, economic statecraft uses economic tools to achieve foreign policy or national security goals. Okay, and not just the economic goals. Second is Kautilya's Arthashastra is recognized as a systematic treatise that integrates economic governance with political and strategic imperative. So this is a correct statement. In fact, your economic survey gives three examples. So one example, of course, of Kautilya's Arthashastra, talking about economic statecraft, but also Athens, which was one of the earlier instances of using economic tools for foreign policy or national security goals, and also the Roman Empire. Okay, so this is correct. Third is export controls, sanctions, tariffs are all example of tools of economic statecraft that fall under the domain of trade and capital. So this again is true. The economic survey gives examples of countries utilizing economic tools for economic statecraft. For example, US putting export controls on advanced chips, okay, primarily to stop China's AI military capabilities. Then China banning rare earth exports. European Union's CBAM, Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, okay, which puts tariffs on carbon intensive imports like steel, cement, then China's Belt and Road Initiative. So all these are examples of economic statecraft. So 2 and 3 is correct. Answer would be 2 and 3B. Second question is consider the following statement regarding nowcasting as an economic tool. Now, nowcasting refers to prediction of the present, very near future, and very recent past using high frequency indicators. So this again is a correct statement. So generally we talk about forecasting, right? When we talk about GDP, gross domestic product, तो उसका forecast करते हैं what would be the GDP, and उसको calculate करने में there is a delay, right? Few months delay होता है, and our policy makers, they require the latest data to make effective policies, and therefore they utilize high frequency indicators like GST numbers or e-way bills, or maybe purchase of certain fast moving consumer goods to nowcast the GDP data. Second statement is the underlying model used for nowcasting India's GDP is a dynamic factor model. So this again is a correct statement. The dynamic factor model utilized here. We don't have to go into the details of what exactly is dynamic factor model, but at least you should know the term. So dynamic factor model is utilized. Nowcasting is more effective for longer horizon forecasting compared to traditional GDP estimation methods. So this is incorrect because nowcasting is not more effective on longer horizon forecasting, right? Nowcasting is more effective for shorter horizon forecasting. So this is incorrect. So the correct answer would be 1 and 2. That is C. Third question, with reference to EU carbon border adjustment mechanism, consider the following statements. CBAM imposes tariffs on import based on the carbon emission embedded in their production. तो ठीक है, straightforward, this is right. जो कार्बन हाई कार्बन एमिशन प्रोडक्ट्स होते हैं लाइक योर स्टील एंड सीमेंट उस पर EU इम्पोज करती है एंड इट पर्टिकुलरली अफेक्ट्स कंट्रीज लाइक इंडिया एंड चाइना. CBAM applies to all categories of imported goods irrespective of their carbon intensity. This in fact is incorrect. Okay, सारे categories of imported goods पे CBAM apply नहीं होता है, only on categories which have high carbon intensity like your cement and steel. CBAM can be understood as a tool of economic statecraft as it serves both climate and trade productive objectives simultaneously. So this is correct. CBAM can be used as a tool of economic statecraft. So your correct answer is 1 and 3. That is B. Fourth, consider the following pair of terms related to global trade and supply chains. Okay. Friend shoring. So these are the terms that you must be hearing. Reshoring, friend shoring, near shoring. So friend shoring is relocating supply chains to geopolitically aligned partner countries. Okay. So these are all methods to strategically safeguard yourself. So friend shoring is you want to have trade relationships with countries with which you have friendly relations. So friend shoring, geopolitically aligned partner countries. So this is correct. Near shoring is moving production closer to home countries to reduce logistics and geopolitical risks. So this is again a trend that we have been witnessing, and this is also correct. Near shoring is moving production closer to either your own country or neighboring countries with which again you have good relations. Foreign direct product rules are rules allowing a country to regulate goods made entirely outside its territory with no connection to its technology or equipment. This is incorrect. The first part of it is correct. It's foreign direct product rules is to regulate goods made entirely outside its territory, but utilizing the technology or equipment of the parent country, जैसे US है. The US is utilizing foreign direct product rules to regulate goods which are manufactured outside USA, but which utilizes technology or equipments which are produced or developed in USA. Okay, so this is incorrect. So how many pairs given above are correctly matched? Answer is only 2. Next question, with reference to India's fiscal policy trends, consider the following statement. India's primary deficit in 2025 remains significantly above its pre-pandemic levels, similar to most other major economies. Okay, now this statement is incorrect. Okay, अगर इंडिया का जो fiscal policy trajectory देखें तो it has done quite well. Okay, India has been adopting a fiscal glide path. Okay, so of course during the COVID year काफ़ी fiscal deficit काफ़ी बढ़ गया था, but after that it has been able to reduce, and now in fact its primary fiscal deficit is lower than the pre-pandemic level. In fact, only India and Brazil are the major economies which have been able to achieve this, और बाकी सारे economies का अभी भी pre-pandemic level से ज़्यादा है. So this is incorrect. The special assistance to states for capital expenditure investment is a central government initiative to incentivize states to maintain capital expenditure. Okay, so again this is a correct statement. SASCI SASCI एक central government का initiative है where they give loans at nil interest or very less interest to states so that they are able to maintain capital expenditure. Okay, so this is correct. Fiscal policy can be considered a form of economic statecraft as it involves strategic allocation of expenditure during geopolitical crisis. So this is also correct. जो fiscal policy होता है, fiscal policy is not just to achieve economic goals, but it is also to achieve foreign policy goals, national security goals, Okay, so this is correct. Which of the following statement given above are correct? Okay, so 2 and 3. Answer is A. Consider the following statements regarding India's external sector. All right. One, in most years, remittances received by India have surpassed gross FDI inflows, making them a key source of external funding. So it is saying that the remittance that India receives, so obviously India has the world's largest diaspora. Indians are settled in different parts of the world, and वो पैसा वापस भेजते हैं, that is remittance. वो ज़्यादा होता है in most years. It is higher than the foreign direct investment. This is a correct statement. Okay, seeing the trends of at least last few years, 4, 5, 6 years, this is in fact correct, and it is also one of the more stable source of external funding, because you don't have to pay back the remittance एक बार आ गया तो there is no obligation to pay it back, whereas the foreign direct investment, at some point of time the investors will withdraw their money from the economy. Okay. Second is, foreign portfolio investments flows are considered more stable than remittance as a source of external funding. So this is not true. FPI, of course, is known as hot money. The investors who invest in India's stock market, they are profit minded, and जब भी कुछ इंटरनेशनल ग्लोबल इवेंट होता है या फिर सम नेशनल इवेंट्स, तो वो पैसा वापस विड्रॉ कर लेते हैं. तो दिस नॉट मोर स्टेबल, रेमिटेंस इज मोर स्टेबल. So this is incorrect. Third, net FDI is defined as gross FDI inflow, net of repatriation, and net FDI of India abroad. So this again is correct. So gross FDI is all the FDI coming into India, and net FDI, so gross FDI, so जो repatriation हो रहा है, right? The money that the investors are now withdrawing. Okay, at some point of time the investors will withdraw their investment, they want to make profit, तो वो जब हटा देते हैं, and also the net FDI by India abroad. Okay, so Indian companies investing in other countries, that is also subtracted, then you get net FDI. So this is correct. Which of the statements given above are correct? Is 1 and 3. B. 7. With reference to India's labor market reforms, which of the following statement are correct? The consolidation of central labor laws into 4 labor codes aim to simplify compliance and enhance labor market flexibility. Yes, you must know this is true. India के पास पहले बहुत सारे labor laws होते थे. In fact, 29 labor laws has been um, consolidated into 4 labor codes, right? So this has been done, and this is to simplify the compliance and enhance labor market flexibility. So this is correct. The labor code include provisions for registration of gig and platform workers within social security schemes. So again, this is true. In fact, this is the first time that gig workers or platform workers, right, workers who are in gig jobs like Zomato, Swiggy, Uber, they have been recognized. Okay, within the social security scheme. So this is correct. The PLFS, Periodic Labor Force Survey, currently provides only annual estimates of employment and unemployment in India. Now this is incorrect, right? PLFS if annual nahi deta hai, it also gives you monthly and quarterly estimates also. So this is incorrect. So the correct answer would be 1 and 2, that is B. 8. Consider the following statements regarding the relationship between government's fiscal discipline and sovereign bond yields. Okay, तो जो fiscal discipline है and sovereign bond yields, उसके बीच का क्या relationship है? 1. When investors perceive a government as credibly committed to fiscal consolidation, sovereign bond yields tend to decline, reducing borrowing cost across the broader economy. So this seems right. अगर गवर्नमेंट को परसीव किया जाएगा कि गवर्नमेंट इज following a path of fiscal consolidation. It is reducing its fiscal deficit. It is reducing its debt to GDP ratio, which means the government is in a strong financial position. और जब strong है तो लोगों का विश्वास बढ़ जाता है. People have more trust in the government and therefore they will be willing to lend money to the government at a lesser uh, interest or lesser returns. तो sovereign bond yield कम होगा, right? Tends to decline. This is correct. Second, elevated fiscal deficit sustained over a long period tend to push up long-term sovereign bond yields as investors demand a higher risk premium. This is also true. Agar fiscal deficit is high for a long period of time, then people will not see the government as very credible. The people will not trust the government to return their money, and therefore they will expect a higher return. So higher risk premium aa jayega. So this is also correct. Third, a decline in a country's sovereign bond yield spread over US Treasury bonds necessarily indicates that the country's absolute bond yield has fallen. Okay. Now, just logically thinking, this does not seem to be right. तो जैसे इंडिया का sovereign bond yield है, right? Suppose this is India's sovereign bond yield, and this is America's sovereign bond yield. America, of course, is America's the US Treasury bonds is the considered very safe investment. तो उसका yields generally कम होता है. तो अगर ये जो spread है ये कम हो रहा है, it is declining. So does that mean India's absolute bond yield has fallen? Not necessarily. Sometimes US का bond yield may have increased also. That may also lead to lesser spread, right? So this is incorrect. So the answer would be correct. पूछ रहा है 1 and 2 C. Consider the following statement regarding India's economic growth. Service sector has consistently remained the largest contributor to India's gross value added in both nominal and real terms. This we know to be true. Services sector सबसे ज़्यादा contribute करता है हमारे GDP में. And constantly this has been happening at least post the LPG reforms in 1991. So this is true. Second, India has maintained its position as the fastest growing major economy for 4 consecutive years. This again is true. It's given in your economic survey. At least for the last 4 years, India's economic growth rate has been faster than China, faster than other major economies. So this is true. Third, the decline in manufacturing's share in nominal GVA is primarily because manufacturing prices have risen more slowly compared to service prices over time rather than any contraction in manufacturing output. Okay, now this also is true. Okay, this has been discussed at length in your economic survey. What actually has happened is that the prices of service and the prices of agriculture product का price, service products का price काफी तेजी से grow हुआ है, and manufacturing का प्राइस थोड़ा सा slowly grow हुआ है, right? And what this does is that the nominal GVA, which also takes into account the inflation, okay? So if inflation is taken into account, the manufacturing in fact का जो share है वो उतनी तेजी से grow नहीं हुआ. In fact, it has declined. All right. So this again is correct. So the answer would be correct पूछा है D 1, 2 and 3. All right, chapter 2 में आते हैं. So your chapter 2 of economic survey is on fiscal developments. तो fiscal policy discuss हुआ है इंडिया का. Generally the chapter 1 state of the economy discusses all the aspects of Indian economy, but ज़्यादा डिटेल में नहीं डिस्कस होता है. एंड देन ईच ऑफ द सब्सिक्वेंट चैप्टर्स में एक एक पार्ट अच्छे से डिस्कस होता है. तो चैप्टर 2 इज ऑन द फिस्कल डेवलपमेंट्स. Question 1. Consider the following statements regarding the nudge framework adopted by India's income tax department. So what India's income tax department has done is it has adopted a nudge framework where they do not want to coerce or punish uh, tax people who are not paying taxes. Rather, they want to adopt a more uh, soft approach where they constantly remind and try to provide data so that more people willingly on their own pay their taxes. Okay. So nudge stands for non-intrusive usage of data to guide and enable. So this is correct. Second, it relies primarily on coercive enforcement mechanisms such as audits and litigation. This nudge is exactly opposite of this. Okay, so this is incorrect. वो audits and litigations पे depend नहीं करते हैं, rather uh, they depend on softer approaches. Okay, let me just tell you quickly. What they do is uh, they give data driven alerts to taxpayers. Okay, so generally you would notice that whenever the income tax date returns जब file करने की date pass आती है तो you start getting this messages, alerts that so many people have already paid their taxes, many people have claimed so much returns, and therefore you should also pay your tax. So those are the kind of things that have been uh, proved to be quite effective. Okay, so it is part of behavioral economics approach. So this is exactly, so statement 2 is incorrect. Third is it leverages large scale data analytics to identify potential non-compliance and guide voluntary correction. Okay, so this is important. Voluntary correction. Khud se you should uh, comply to all the income tax laws. So this is correct. So which of the statement is correct? 1 and 3. B. Second question, consider the following statements regarding the goods and services tax 2.0 reforms. So India has brought in the GST 2.0 reforms, right, where they have changed the slabs, tax slabs. So the reform introduced a two-rate structure with a standard rate of 18% and merit rate of 5%. This is correct. Second is a special demerit or sin good rate of 40% was introduced, which is in addition to the earlier compensation cess, thereby increasing the overall tax burden on such goods. Okay. Important to note here that it says this is in addition to earlier compensation cess. So earlier, uh, the rate used to be 28% plus compensation cess, which used to increase it to 40%. Now it is 40% inclusive of the compensation cess. The addition, this is incorrect. Okay, so this statement is wrong. GST on individual life and health insurance policies were was exempted under the reform. This in fact is correct. जो GST ऑन इंश्योरेंस पॉलिसीज उसको एग्जेम्प्ट कर दिया गया है, 0% GST लगेगा, so that it becomes more affordable and people opt for life and health insurance policies. So the correct statements are 1 and 3. A. Third, the term primary deficit in government finance refers to the difference between total government expenditure and total revenue receipts, the fiscal deficit minus interest payment and past borrowings, a revenue deficit minus capital expenditure, and revenue difference between tax revenue and non-tax revenue of the government. So the correct answer is B, of course. This is a very static question, theoretical question. Primary deficit is fiscal deficit minus interest payment on past borrowings. In fact, India has been able to achieve 0% primary deficit, which means, अगर इसको practically सोचे तो which means that India is no longer borrowing money for making either revenue expenditure or capital expenditure. India is only borrowing money to pay interest payments on past borrowings. Okay, so B is the correct answer. Fourth, consider the following statements regarding special assistance to states for capital expenditure investment scheme. SASCI scheme है. We have already talked about it. It provides 50-year interest-free loans to states exclusively for capital expenditure. This again is correct. So 50 साल के लिए interest-free loan center is giving to the states only for capital expenditure. So this money they cannot use for revenue expenditure. They cannot use it for subsidies or schemes or those sort of things. Only for capital expenditure it can be used. Okay. It was launched in 2020 in the wake of COVID-19 pandemic. This again is correct. I don't think they will ask that किस साल में launch हुआ था, but it was launched in the wake of COVID-19 pandemic. COVID-19 pandemic में of course many of the states उनको बहुत खर्च करने की ज़रूरत थी and they were mainly doing revenue expenditure and therefore central decided that they will give 50-year interest-free loans so that at least the capital expenditure part is also covered for the states and जो इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर बिल्ड होने का जो स्पीड है वो रुक ना जाए. 3. States with higher per capita incomes have relied more heavily on SASCI to finance capital outlay. This in fact is wrong. Okay, states with lower per capita income, of course जिस states में higher per capita income है उन states का revenue काफ़ी अच्छा है and therefore they are able to make capital expenditure on their own, whereas states जहाँ पे lower per capita income है they have limitations of resources and therefore they depend on the center for these kind of loans. So this is incorrect. कौन सा correct है? 1 and 2 A. Okay. Consider the following pairs regarding GST 2.0 rate changes. ओके कौन कौन से रेट चाहिए इनफैक्ट इसका एक पूरा टेबल है तुम्हारे इकोनॉमिक सर्वे में एंड आई डू रिकमेंड यू एटलीस्ट गो थ्रू इट एंड सी व्हाट चेंजेस हैव बीन मेड बिकॉज similar questions was asked in I think 2017 when GST was first introduced and अब GST 2.0 आया है. This has been a major reform and therefore at least you should have idea of what changes has been brought. Okay. Agricultural machinery, tractors reduced from 12% to 5%. Yes, this makes sense. In fact, this is correct. Agriculture machineries में 12% से 5% कर दिया गया है. To assist the farmers, small cars and motorcycles 350cc and below has been reduced from 28% to 18%. Okay. This again is true. Okay, जो small cars and motorcycles है उसमें भी GST कम किया गया है. Beauty and personal well-being services like gyms, salons reduced from 28% to 18%. This is not correct. इसको कम करके in fact this has been reduced to 5%. I believe. Okay, so this is not correct. So 1 and 2. A is the correct answer. Okay, let me also just quickly check that I am right with respect to beauty and personal well-being products. हाँ 5% किया गया है. Right. Question 6. Consider the following statements regarding the inverted duty structure under GST. So this is a big challenge for GST. Inverted duty structure काफी discuss किया गया economic survey में. So let's see what it is. Statement 1. IDS refers to a situation where tax rates on inputs are higher and tax rates than tax rates on outputs. So this in fact is the definition of IDS. जो inputs raw materials में जो tax लग रहा है that is higher and जो output है उस पर tax rate लगता है वो that is lower. So what it does is that you keep on accumulating input tax credit but you don't have anywhere to utilize it. Okay. IDS creates working capital stress for producers as they accumulate unutilized input tax credit. This again is correct. And third is IDS can be corrected only by increasing the output rate, not by reducing the input rate. So ये incorrect है of course. Either you can increase the output rate tax rate or you can reduce the input tax rate. So this is not correct. So the correct answer is 1 and 2A. 7. Consider the following statements about unconditional cash transfers at the state levels in India. Okay, so this also has been discussed at length in your economic survey. Various states are, implementing these unconditional cash transfers, particularly states which has been going to elections. वो अपने schemes ला रहे हैं, like मैया समान योजना, लाडली बहना योजना, those kind of unconditional cash transfer schemes. Now, the statement one, higher allocation to UCTs tend to crowd out capital expenditure when fiscal space is constrained. So this correct. अगर गवर्नमेंट के पास, स्टेट गवर्नमेंट के पास एक लिमिटेड अमाउंट ऑफ मनी है, उसमें ज़्यादातर अगर अनकंडीशनल कैश ट्रांसफर्स में चला जाएगा, और कैश ट्रांसफर इज काइंड ऑफ सब्सिडी कंसिडर्ड टू बी पार्ट ऑफ योर रेवेन्यू एक्सपेंडिचर, तो उसमें चला जाएगा, तो द स्टेट्स विल हैव वेरी लेस मनी लेफ्ट फॉर कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर, तो कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर क्राउड आउट हो गया. Correct. Evidence from international randomized evaluations consistently show that UCTs improve child nutrition and enable sustained exits from poverty. This in fact is wrong. Okay, there has been many international studies done which shows that जो unconditional cash transfers होता है उससे child nutrition is not improving, or exits from poverty is also not happening. So the goals of these UCTs is not being achieved. So this is incorrect. Third, many UCT schemes in India lack sunset clauses or periodic reviews, increasing rigidity in the revenue expenditure. This again is correct. There is no sunset clause. Sunset clause means there has to be a time period for which this schemes is implemented, और उस time period के end होने के बाद अपने आप scheme बंद हो जाएगी. But ऐसे जो states implement कर रहे हैं ये unconditional cash transfers, they do not have any sunset clause, which means it is for an indefinite period of time. And once the government commits it indefinitely, then of course वो काफ़ी rigid expenditure हो जाएगा. The governments will find it very difficult to curb that expenditure. वो स्कीम बंद नहीं कर पाएंगे, राइट. सो दिस इज करेक्ट. तो कौन सा करेक्ट है? 1 and 3A. Which of the following best describes the just-in-time fund release system adopted by the central government? Okay, just in time. So as the word suggests, what the central government now is doing is they are releasing the fund as the work is being finished. Okay, just in time, so that there is no funds that is in one place getting wasted. Say efficiency increase hoga, right? So a system where funds are released in bulk at the beginning of each financial year to reduce administrative delays. Of course, this is wrong. Bulk में at the beginning of the financial year नहीं हो रहा है. Second, a debit pull model where funds are released only when actual expenditure is incurred, replacing advanced bulk transfers. So this is the correct answer. जो ए है वो पहले होता था, अब नाउ द गवर्नमेंट हैज अडॉप्टेड जस्ट इन टाइम फंड रिलीज. C, credit push models that pre-funds implementing agencies based on project annual expenditure targets. So this is again is not correct. And a system that releases funds only to state governments directly without routing through central ministries. This is also not correct. So answer is B. Next question. Consider the following statements about India's general government debt trajectory. Okay, so India का जो debt to GDP ratios का trajectory, what has been the trend in the past few years. First, India's general government debt to GDP ratio peaked during COVID-19 pandemic and has been on a consolidation path since. So this again is correct. During the COVID, of course, the government borrowed a lot of money, तो debt to GDP ratio काफ़ी increase हो गया था. Since then, it has been successful in adopting a fiscal consolidation path, and debt to GDP ratio has been coming down. This is correct. Among large emerging economies, India has reduced its general government debt to GDP ratio since 2020 while sustaining high public investments. This again is correct. So India has been one of the few countries who has been able to uh, able to achieve the fiscal consolidation path, right? So it has been able to reduce the debt to GDP ratio. At the same time, the capital expenditure has also been rising, so public investment भी increase हो रहा है. Third, the central government medium-term goal is to achieve a debt to GDP ratio of 50 plus minus 1% by financial year 31. This again is true. In fact, this is very important to note that earlier the target of the government used to be to reduce or target the fiscal deficit. Okay, so fiscal deficit used to be the fiscal anchor for the government. Now the government said that we'll not use fiscal deficit, but rather we would target debt to GDP ratio and we try to bring it down to 50% plus minus 1% by financial year 31. Okay, so this is more aligned with the global best practices. So this has been adopted in India also. So all 1, 2, and 3 are correct. So the right answer would be D. Okay. Next, let's come to chapter 3. In the chapter 3 is on monetary management and financial intermediation. Okay, so this chapter discusses the monetary policy of the government, of monetary policy of the RBI, and the financial intermediaries, right? Banks, stock market, microfinance institutions, and all that. Okay, the first question: consider the following statements regarding the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code. It replaced a fragmented regime of multiple statutes with a unified framework for resolving corporate distress. Yes, so that this is correct. This is the idea behind Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code. ये सही है. The resolution process under IBC is driven by debtors within defined timelines. Okay. Now this, important to note, is not driven by debtors. Debtors होते हैं जो उधार लेते हैं. They borrow money, right? And the creditors are ones who give loans. So creditors, the banks, the bank uh, drives the resolution process. Okay, so through Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, more power is given to the banks. So this is incorrect. S&P Global Rating upgraded India's insolvency regime from Group C to Group B in 2025. So this is correct. This is information that is there in your economic survey. तो S&P Standards and Poor's Global Ratings है, उन्होंने इंडिया का जो insolvency regime है उसको upgrade किया है, and particularly because of adoption of Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, which has been able to reduce India's non-performing assets significantly. In fact, India का non-performing asset काफ़ी कम हो गया है. Multi-decade low में है, I think around 2.2%. So this has been a very significant achievement, and rightfully deserves an upgrade from the rating agencies. So this is again is correct. So the correct answer would be 1 and 3, B. Consider the following statements regarding money multiplier. Okay, now money multiplier is a concept, of course, you must have studied in the book also. The money multiplier is defined as ratio of broad money to reserve money. So generally RBI calculates money multiplier as M3 divided by M0, right? Broad money and reserve money. So this is correct. Second, an upward trajectory in the money multiplier indicates improved financial intermediation in the banking system, which means that agar money multiplier increase ho raha hai, right, the value of money multiplier is increasing, then it means that more and more people are transacting through banks, which again which means more money is getting circulated. So again that is true, क्योंकि जितना ज़्यादा बैंकिंग सर्विसेज यूज़ करेंगे लोग उतना मनी सर्कुलेट होगा, और उतना इतनी ज़्यादा बार मनी सर्कुलेट होगा तो M3 का वैल्यू बढ़ेगा. सो दिस करेक्ट. थर्ड, a reduction in cash reserve ratio would, all else equal, tend to decrease money multiplier. But let's think about it. Cash reserve ratio is the money, is the cash that bank have to keep aside, right? Bank cannot loan out cash reserve ratio. तो अगर कैश रिजर्व रेशियो कम कर दिया जाए तो बैंक्स विल हैव मोर मनी टू लोन. अगर मोर मनी टू लोन होगा तो ऑफ कोर्स द वैल्यू ऑफ ब्रॉड मनी M3 विल इंक्रीज, राइट. सो दिस इज इनकरेक्ट. Decrease नहीं होगा, it would increase the money multiplier. So the right answer would be 1 and 2, right? And in fact, if you see the value of money multiplier in India, so I think it is around 6.2 right now, and last year it was around 5.7. So India's money multiplier has in fact been increasing. All right. Third, which of the following best describes the concept of reserve money? The reserve money, of course, this is a very theory based question. There's कोई application based नहीं है. So you have to know the formula here. Let's see. Currency in circulation plus aggregate deposit with banks plus net foreign asset exchange assets. जहाँ aggregate deposit with banks आ गया, that is not part of reserve money, right? वो फिर money supply का part हो जाता है. M1, M2, M3, M4. So this is not correct. Second is circulation, currency in circulation plus bankers deposit with RBI plus other deposits with RBI. In fact, this is the correct answer. So it's also part there in the book also. Indian Economy Handbook may you'll see this information there. Okay. So that is 3. Fourth, consider the following statements about the RBI's free AI framework. Okay, so RBI, this is a new reform that RBI has initiated, free AI framework to utilize AI in the banking industry. तो क्या है ये? It is built around 7 core guiding principles collectively referred to as 7 sutras. Okay, so again this is correct. तो ये 7 sutras जो हैं उस पे built है. 7 sutras is your trust, people first, innovation over restraint, fairness, accountability, understandability and safety. तो ठीक है. आई थिंक ये 7 सूत्रास याद रखने का ज़रूरत नहीं है, बट एटलीस्ट यू शुड नो. One of its strategic pillars involves developing shared data infrastructure to democratize AI access for small financial institutions. So in fact this is also correct. ये one of the goals है RBI का, one of the incentives to develop the shared data infrastructure such that जो smaller financial institutions है वो भी AI को use कर पाए, right, and not just the larger ones. Third, the framework prohibits use of regulatory sandboxes to prevent uncontrolled AI experimentation. This in fact is incorrect. Okay, in fact जो ये free AI framework है ये encourage करता है to utilize regulatory sandbox, because regulatory sandbox is a very controlled environment. Okay, so whenever some maybe financial tools or financial uh, products are made, तो वो directly deploy तो नहीं कर सकते हैं economy में, because they have not been tested, and therefore first the proper testing is done in a regulatory sandbox. तो वही control environment में उसको regulatory उसको test किया जाता है, and if that test becomes successful then it is deployed over the larger economy. So this is incorrect, and the correct answer would be 1 and 2, B. ठीक है. Which of the following pairs regarding government's microcredit schemes are correctly matched? Okay, so these are various schemes and uska kya primary target hai. PM Swanidhi is for street vendors. This is correct. Stand Up India is for disadvantaged sections, right? SC, ST, women entrepreneurs, for greenfield enterprises. This again is correct. PM Mudra Yojana is for large enterprises in manufacturing and services. This is wrong. PM Mudra Yojana is for small MSMEs, right? उसके अंदर you get your Shishu, Kishore, Tarun plus loans. So these are generally for MSMEs. So this is not correct. So correct answer is 1 and 2, A. Sixth, consider the following statement about the account aggregator framework in India. Okay, क्या है ये? It is part of India's digital public infrastructure This is true. जो account aggregator होता है, what they do is they take data and provide that data to financial institutions, right? So it supplies lenders with verified data such as bank transactions and GST records. So this is in fact correct. This is the definition of account aggregator. Major function, राइट, कि वो ये डेटा जो बैंक ट्रांजैक्शंस का डेटा और जीएसटी का डेटा देते हैं lenders को, so that lenders can verify and use that data to identify potential borrowers, right? क्योंकि उससे पता चलता है कि how much transaction is happening in that person's bank account and how much loan can be given. Okay, तो risk assessment करने के काम आता है ये. So this is correct. Third is its primary purpose is to enable direct equity investment by retail investors in primary market. So this is not correct. Equity investment इसका primary purpose नहीं है. Primary purpose is to ensure that uh, whether that person has enough credit record or bank transaction credit history that the or GST records, that person can be found suitable for giving some loans. तो वो major काम है उसका. So 1 and 2 is correct. The right answer would be C, 1 and 2. Next question. Consider the following statements about the functioning of microfinance institutions in India. NBFC MFIs hold the largest market share in the microfinance sector by loan outstanding. All right. सबसे ज़्यादा share MFIs का है. This in fact is correct. Okay. The MFIs in fact have the largest share in the microfinance sector by loan outstanding. So this is correct. Microfinance sector has a predominantly rural and women borrowers base. So this again is correct. Okay. जो microfinance institutions हैं generally rural. In fact, the economic survey gives you data also. Let me quickly find out. It gives high amount 80, I think 80% to rural and 95% of the borrowers are female. Okay, so that's the data. And self-regulatory organizations, SROs in microfinance, are a substitute for RBI's prescribed regulatory requirement for MFIs. This is not correct. This is correct. This is not correct because they are not a substitute. Okay. They just helps RBI, but RBI remains the regulator for microfinance institutions. So the correct answer would be 1 and 2, A. With reference to the Financial Inclusion Index published by the Reserve Bank of India, consider the following statement. It captures data across 3 dimensions: access, usage and quality. This is correct. जो Financial Inclusion Index है RBI का, वो 3 dimension में data collect करती है. How much is the access, how much is the usage, and what is the quality of data. Okay. The quality sub-index has the highest weight among 3 sub-indices. Now, even logically thinking, this should not be correct. Okay, quality ka highest weight क्यों होगा? Highest weight should be either to access or usage. In fact, usage का highest weight होता है. I think 40%, and then 40 or 45%, and then I think 35% and 20%. This is the weightage given to the 3 sub-indices. The index value of 100 indicates complete financial inclusion. This is also correct. So this is 1 and 3 is correct, 2 is wrong. And answer is A, 1 and 3. Which of the following statement best explains why large corporations in India have reduced their demand for bank credit in recent years? So this is again a recent trend कि जो large corporations are, they're not now going to the banks for funds. Okay. The smaller corporations or MSMEs, they are more reliant on banks for loans or funds, but large corporations, they are not. So let's see the reason. A is large corporations are legally prohibited from accessing bond market directly. This is not. Of course, this is incorrect. Legally कोई legal prohibition नहीं है. Second, rising internal profitability and better access to market-based instruments like corporate bonds have reduced their dependence on bank credit. So this is correct. This is the reasons. एक तो large corporations का profitability बढ़ गया है. Once the profitability has increased, they have funds available within the corporation only, and also they have more access to market based instruments like corporate bonds, so they can float bonds in the market and people can invest money in that company. तो उससे क्या होता है कि बैंक में जिस रेट से मिलता है उससे कम रेट में मार्केट इंस्ट्रूमेंट्स से मिल जाता है, मार्केट इंस्ट्रूमेंट्स कॉर्पोरेट बॉन्ड से मिल जाता है. सो दिस इज द करेक्ट आंसर. Let's see other options also. RBI's monetary tightening has made bank credit inaccessible for large corporations while keeping it available for MSMEs. ऐसा कुछ नहीं है. And foreign direct investment norms now mandate that large corporations primarily rely on external commercial borrowings. ऐसा भी नहीं है. So B is the correct answer. Okay. Okay, let's start with chapter 4. Consider the following statements about the production linked incentive PLI scheme. The PLI scheme was introduced to enhance domestic manufacturing and promote exports. Yes, so that was the idea behind PLI scheme, so that ज़्यादा domestic manufacturing हो और exports भी बढ़े. So this is true. Among PLI sectors, telecom sector has achieved import substitution by recording export growth alongside a concurrent decline in imports. Okay, now this statement is true. In fact, the telecom sector has been one of the case studies on how import substitution has been achieved. A lot of investment has been brought into the country, and a lot of big companies like Apple, Samsung, other companies are now producing in India, and export भी इंडिया का multiple times से increase हुआ है. So this is true. The PLI scheme currently covers 20 sectors of the Indian economy. So PLI scheme, when it was brought, it covered 14 sectors. So right now it is covering 14 sectors. बाद में, of course, Indian government will expand it. But right now this is an incorrect statement. So the answer would be B, 1 and 2. With reference to India's balance of payment, consider the following statement. The service trade surplus consistently offsets a majority of India's merchandise trade deficit. Okay, so you should know that we do have a merchandise trade deficit. मतलब कि जितना goods हम export करते हैं उससे काफ़ी ज़्यादा हम import करते हैं. And of course in services we have a trade surplus. We export more services and we import less. And service trade surplus does offset 2/3 of India's merchandise trade deficit. So this statement is correct. Remittance inflows have in most years surpassed gross FDI inflows as a source of external financing. This again we have also discussed is true. Okay, India does have a very, in fact, the world's largest diaspora, and they send in a lot of money to the country, and वो बहुत reliable source of money because we don't have to pay it back, right? And it has surpassed gross FDI inflow. So this also is correct. Private transfer receipts in BOP statistics primarily consist of official government transfers from abroad. Now, this again, the statement itself is wrong. कि private transfer, of course, they'll not consist of official government transfers. वो mostly remittance होते हैं by in the Indian diaspora. So this is incorrect. So the answer would be 1 and 2. That is C. All right. Consider the following pairs regarding global trade concepts. Okay, a similar question was earlier also. Friend shoring, we know relationship, more better relationships in global supply chain with friendly countries. So increase trade with geographically proximate partners. नहीं, ये गलत है. This is near shoring, right? तो near shoring भी गलत होगा. Increasing trade with politically aligned partners, that is friend shoring. तो ये दोनों गलत है. Reshoring is bringing production back to the home country. This is correct. So how many above pairs are correctly matched? Has to be only one. B. All right. Fourth question. With reference to India's external debt, consider the following statement. India's external debt as a proportion of GDP is among highest in the G20. Okay. तो ये statement is not correct. India is in fact has been quite successful in containing its external debt. Okay. और G20 में बाकी countries उनका काफी ज़्यादा है. So our external debt to GDP ratio is around 18 to 20%, and which is much less than many other G20 countries. So this is not correct. External debt constitutes less than 5% of the government of India's total debt. This is correct. In fact, most of our government of India's debt is internal debt. Okay, जो internal domestic markets से debt उठाती है government by selling government securities and all, वो 95% से ज़्यादा external debt is very less. So this is correct statement. And the maturity profile of India's external debt is considered favorable. This is also true. Most of India's external debt has a very long the maturity date is very long. Okay. So those are a debt of 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. And therefore, it is much more stable because India does not have to pay that money back immediately. The maturity profile is considered favorable. That's correct. So answer is 2 and 3. That is B. Next question. Consider the following statement about the exchange rate and India's balance of payments. Okay. A depreciation of the Indian rupee is generally beneficial for the merchandise trade balance due to high elasticity of trade flows to exchange rate changes. Okay. So now what will happen if the Indian rupee depreciates? अगर इंडिया का रुपी depreciate होता है तो इंडिया के जो exports हैं वो ज़्यादा competitive हो जाएंगे इंटरनेशनल मार्केट में. ओके एंड अगर वो ज़्यादा कॉम्पिटिटिव हो जाएंगे तो इट इज़ बेनिफिशियल फॉर द मर्चेंडाइज ट्रेड बैलेंस. सो दिस इज़ इन फैक्ट करेक्ट. जो इंडिया का मर्चेंडाइज ट्रेड है दैट इज़ हाईली रिस्पॉन्सिव टू द रूपी डेप्रिशिएशन, क्योंकि इलास्टिसिटी ज़्यादा है. अगर थोड़ा सा रूपी वीक हो जाता है तो इट सिग्निफिकेंटली डज इम्प्रूव द मर्चेंडाइज ट्रेड बैलेंस. सो दिस इज़ करेक्ट. सेकेंड, India's service exports from India exhibits high elasticity to exchange rate changes compared to merchandise trade. Now this in fact is incorrect. जो ये statement है ये बोल रहा है कि जो service exports है हमारा वो काफ़ी elastic है, which means that अगर इंडिया का करेंसी अप्रिशिएट होगा तो पीपल विल मूव ऑन एंड टेक सर्विसेज फ्रॉम अदर कंट्रीज, विच इज़ नॉट ट्रू. Okay, so this is incorrect statement. What actually is the situation is कि जो इंडिया के सर्विस एक्सपोर्ट्स है विच इट इज़ वेरी inelastic. Okay, काफ़ी inelastic बिहेवियर है उसका एंड दिस शोज दैट इंडिया का जो मार्केट पावर है, इंडियाज मार्केट पावर पर्टिकुलरली इन स्पेशलाइज सर्विसेज लाइक सॉफ्टवेयर और कंसल्टेंसी इज quality driven. Okay, it is quality driven rather than price driven, which means that other countries cannot provide the quality of services that India provides. And therefore अगर थोड़ा सा करेंसी रेट ऊपर नीचे भी हो जाता है तो that will not have much effect on our services exports. So this is not correct. Third, a weaker currency benefits the trade channel of the balance of payment but may impose cost on the financial channel by potentially raising external borrowing cost. So again this is correct. अगर करेंसी वीक होता है तो ऑफ कोर्स आवर एक्सपोर्ट्स डज इंक्रीज, बट एट द सेम टाइम एक्सटर्नल बोरोइंग कॉस्ट ऑल्सो इंक्रीजेस. ओके, तो फाइनेंशियल चैनल में उसका बर्डन पड़ेगा. सो दिस इज करेक्ट. आंसर वुड बी 1 and 3, दैट इज ए. ओके, consider the following statements about net international investment position in IAP. A positive NIIP indicates that a country's external financial assets exceeds its external liabilities, making it a net creditor nation. This again is true, right? Agar external assets is greater than the external liabilities, which means that the country is a net creditor. It is giving out money, okay, rather than receiving money. So this is true. A country that runs persistent current account surpluses generally tend to accumulate net positive NIP over time. Okay, which means that agar current account surplus hai, which means exports is much more than the imports. Okay, so obviously uska jo assets hoga will be much more than the liabilities, and over time it does tend to be a net accumulate a net positive NIP. So जैसे countries are like Germany, right? Germany, Japan, these have positive NIPs. India is net debtor, right? India is not a creditor nation because हमारा जो exports है is less than our imports. A negative NIP indicates that a country faces an immediate external sector crisis. This is not true. uh, Immediate external sector crisis nahi hai. Countries does have large negative NIPs, but still quite stable countries. Depends on the nature of economy. जैसे USA है. USA does have a large negative NIP, but it is quite a strong economy. Similarly, India also has a negative NIP, but is also a very stable economy. So this is not true. 6 ka 1 and 2A is the correct answer. Right, let's come to chapter 5. Chapter 5 is on inflation. Consider the following statements regarding consumer price index and wholesale price index in India. Okay. WPI measures factory gate prices for producers, while CPI measures retail prices faced by consumers. So, okay, this is in fact is true. This is the definition of CPI and WPI. WPI based inflation has consistently remained higher than CPI based inflation in recent year. This is not true, right? And particularly because CPI के अंदर food का weightage काफी ज़्यादा होता है, and food at least not this year, but in the past few years, the inflation of food has been quite high, and therefore CPI has been greater than WPI. In the last year, food का price काफी कम हुआ है, इसलिए CPI has been less than WPI. But consistently remain higher नहीं कह सकते. So this is incorrect statement. Third, a declining WPI can exert a moderating influence on CPI inflation. Okay, तो अगर WPI कम हो रहा है तो it will have a moderating effect influence on CPI inflation, which is true, right? अगर WPI कम होता है, WPI is subdued, then the input cost pressure on CPI will also on the consumer goods will also decrease, and CPI means generally the consumer goods are there in the basket, and therefore CPI will also feel the moderating effect. So this is true. Answer would be 1 and 3, that is B. Consider the following statements regarding core inflation. Okay, now we know core inflation is inflation minus the inflation of food and fuel, right? So core inflation is computed excluding food and beverages and fuel and light from the headline CPI. Okay, this is true. This in fact is the definition of core inflation. Second, a rise in gold and silver prices can push up measured core inflation even if underlying demand side pressures are subdued. Okay, now this is very important to understand. Gold and silver is neither food neither fuel, and therefore it is part of core inflation. तो अगर gold and silver का price which has increased a lot over the past year, तो अगर वो rise होता है तो core inflation also increases even though other factors are in favor. तो other factor जो underlying demand side pressures है, that is in favor, and essentially अगर gold and silver का price हटा दिया जाए तो core inflation will be moderating, but because of gold and silver, core price has also increased. So this is also true. Third is core inflation is always lower than headline inflation. Now, of course, always तो नहीं होगा, right? It depends on how much is the inflation of फूड एंड फ्यूल, अगर फूड एंड फ्यूल का नेगेटिव इन्फ्लेशन deflation होता है, right? So in that case core inflation will be higher than the headline inflation, so this is not correct. Answer would be 1 and 2, that is B. With reference to GDP deflator, okay, so GDP deflator of course is nominal GDP divided by real GDP, right? And it is also a measure of inflation. Consider the following. GDP deflator is defined as ratio of real GDP to nominal GDP, right? So is it ratio of real GDP to nominal GDP? No, right? रियल जीडीपी डिनोमिनेटर में होता है, नॉमिनल जीडीपी न्यूमरेटर में होता है, तो ऑपोजिट है, ये उल्टा किया हुआ है, and therefore this is not correct. Unlike CPI or WPI, GDP deflator reflects economy-wide price movements, including services and changes in the composition of output. Now this is true because GDP deflator measure करने के लिए we are taking the ratio of nominal GDP divided by real GDP, and nominal GDP and real GDP is calculated for the whole of economy. So this is correct. Third, the implicit price deflator for a sector can be derived as the ratio of its nominal current price GVA to its real constant price GVA. Okay, for sectors, agar GDP deflators we are calculating for specific sectors, for example the services sectors or the industrial sector or the agriculture sector, तो उसके लिए GVA use करेंगे, value added method of calculating the GDP, and this is correct. ठीक है, nominal divided by real, so answer would be 2 and 3, that is B. All right, consider the following statements regarding inflation decomposition. Okay, inflation decomposition, what is inflation decomposition and uske regarding kya statement hai, right? The first, the momentum effect in inflation analysis captures the influence of price movement in corresponding months of the previous year on current year-on-year inflation. Okay, momentum effect. This is in fact not true. Momentum effect captures last month से इस month क्या changes in inflation रहा है. All right. So that is not what essentially is it is defining is base effect. Base effect captures what was the inflation in last say in the same month last year. जैसे अगर मान लो अभी मार्च का इन्फ्लेशन कैलकुलेट कर रहे हैं, तो व्हाट वाज द इन्फ्लेशन इन मार्च ऑफ लास्ट ईयर एंड व्हाट इज द इन्फ्लेशन इन मार्च ऑफ दिस ईयर, सो दैट इज बेस इफेक्ट, not momentum effect. So this is wrong, this is base effect. Second is the base effect refers month on month price changes occurring in the current period. This ये again चेंज किया हुआ है, राइट? एंड यूपीएससी डज दिस अलॉट, वो कोई एक कीवर्ड चेंज कर देते हैं दो स्टेटमेंट्स में, तो दोनों स्टेटमेंट गलत हो जाता है. सो दिस इज मोमेंटम इफेक्ट, so this again is wrong. Third, a high base from the previous year tends to suppress year-on-year inflation readings in current year even if current prices are rising. Okay, and this is what is known as base effect, right? तो अगर लास्ट ईयर काफ़ी हाई प्राइजेस होगा, which means base is quite high, then this year the calculation of inflation will be very moderate even though the prices are rising. So this is correct, so answer would be A, 3 only. All right, with reference to India's edible oil market, okay, and India is import dependent on edible oil, you must all know that. Consider the following statements. India meets more than half of its domestic edible oil consumption through imports, making price sensitive to global price movement. Yes, this is correct. This is true. India जो अपने total edible oil consumption का more than half of it is met through imports. Okay. Second, a basic customs duty on crude edible oil import is used as a tool to manage domestic price volatility. This is also true. इंडियन गवर्नमेंट डज दिस फ्रॉम टाइम टू टाइम, जब भी प्राइस काफ़ी हाई होता है या लो होता है, इट changes the basic customs duty so that domestic prices do not fluctuate too much. This is true. Three, a reduction in import duty on edible oil is typically used when domestic or edible oil prices are falling sharply. Will this ever happen? अगर domestic oil prices बहुत तेजी से कम हो रहा है, then will the government further reduce import duty? अगर वो करेगा तो obviously the prices will fall down even faster. So this will never happen. In fact, reduction happens when the domestic edible oil prices increases sharply, right? So this is incorrect. So which of the statements are correct? 1 and 2. A. Consider the following pairs relating to the terms of trade concept applied to India's sector. Okay. Terms of trade is essentially how goods or services is traded relative to each other, right? तो sector है relative price trend vis-a-vis manufacturing. So in comparison to manufacturing, how are the prices of other sectors rising or falling? Okay, agriculture is rising. In fact, this is true. Okay, as per the economic survey, जो agricultural goods के prices हैं, fruits, vegetables, grains, in सब के cereals, in सब के prices, they are rising at a faster rate than the prices of the manufacturing goods. Services is also rising, so this is also true. Okay, even the services prices are rising at a faster rate than manufacturing. Manufacturing rising related to agriculture. Okay, this is incorrect. Okay, in fact, this is one of the reasons why the contribution of manufacturing sector as a percentage of GDP has been declining, is at around 12 to 13%. So the economic survey argues that even though it is around 12 and 13%, this is due to unfavorable terms of trade, that the prices of manufacturing goods have not increased in comparison to agriculture and services. तो अगर nominal में देखा जाए तो manufacturing does have, और real value में देखा जाए तो manufacturing still has a contribution of around 16 to 17%, लेकिन क्योंकि इसके prices कम है and therefore it seems like it is only contributing 12 to 13% of GDP. So the answer would be 1 and 2, that is B. Consider the following statements regarding rural and urban inflation patterns in India. Okay, rural inflation tends to be more volatile than urban inflation primarily because food items carry a higher weight in rural consumption basket. Okay, this is true. जो रूरल कंजम्पशन बास्केट है उसमें फूड आइटम्स का वेटेज ज़्यादा है एंड फूड डज टेंड टू बी क्वाइट वॉलेटाइल इन इट्स प्राइसिंग. उसका प्राइस काफ़ी तेज़ी से ऊपर नीचे होता है एंड देयरफॉर इट इज़ मच मोर वॉलेटाइल. रूरल इन्फ्लेशन, दैट इज करेक्ट. Core inflation, excluding food and fuel, shows a wider and more persistent gap between rural and urban inflation, urban areas compared to headline inflation. Now, think logically. The volatility is due to food inflation, right? Now if you exclude food, core inflation mein there would be less gap, right? Not more and persistent gap, and therefore this is incorrect. Third, during periods of elevated food price inflation, the rural urban inflation gap tends to widen. Again, this is true, and this is because the rural CPI basket में food का weightage ज़्यादा है. So 1 and 3 is correct. Which of the following best describes the significance of buffer stocking and market release operations conducted by the Government of India for commodities like onions, tomatoes, potatoes? Okay, तो जो अनियन टमेटोज पोटैटोज इनका जो गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया बफर स्टॉक करती है और एट टाइम टू टाइम मार्केट रिलीज करती है, सो व्हाट इज व्हाई इज दैट डन? They are used primarily to support farmer income by ensuring minimum support prices for these crops, which is not true. Onion, tomatoes, potatoes के लिए कोई MSP नहीं होता है. In fact, it would be a very good idea for you to remember all the 22 crops for which MSP is announced by the government. B. There are supply side interventions aimed at stabilizing retail prices of highly perishable commodities with volatile seasonal production. Yes, so this is the reason. Okay, these onions, tomatoes, potatoes, they are perishable. They have volatile seasonal production, whereas these are required by or consumed by the Indian population throughout the year, right? So it does not matter when is onion, tomatoes, potatoes grown. These are not seasonal vegetables. These are used in a typical Indian kitchen on a daily basis. तो उसके लिए smooth supply of these is required, and therefore buffer stocks and market release are done by the government from time to time. So this is true. बाकी दो ऑप्शन भी पढ़ते हैं. Their demand side fiscal tools used to reduce GST rates on essential vegetables during inflation. That does not make sense. And they constitute India's strategic food reserve maintained exclusively for national food security during drought years. तो अगर national food security में these vegetables are not there, there is only rice, wheat and coarse grains, right? So this is again not true. Consider the following statements about monetary policy responses among major central banks. ठीक है, मेजर सेंट्रल बैंक्स अराउंड द कंट्री उनका जो मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी रिस्पॉन्स क्या रहा है. द बैंक ऑफ जापान एंडेड इट्स नेगेटिव इंटरेस्ट रेट regime and subsequently raised its policy rate, unlike major other central banks which were cutting rates. So this in fact is true. Okay, now because the inflation has been under control or slowly declining in most of the countries, most of the central banks have cut rates so as to give more impetus to the economy, so that borrowing has would be easier in those economies. But जो Bank of Japan है उसका काफ़ी टाइम से नेगेटिव इंटरेस्ट रेट चल रहा था, so now it has raised its policy rate. So this is true. Reserve Bank of India RBI adoption of an inflation targeting framework has helped anchor inflationary expectations compared to the pre-2014 period. So this is also true. So this as per the economic survey, 2014 के पहले and during the early 2000s, 2010s, we even reached a double-digit inflation. Inflation was not as much in control, but since the adoption of this inflation targeting framework, particularly after the constitution of Monetary Policy Committee 2016, RBI has been quite successful in keeping the inflation within the 2 to 6% band. Okay, थोड़ा सा ऊपर नीचे होता है, but more or less RBI has been quite successful. So this is also correct. Third, central banks in advanced economies typically raise policy rates during periods of deflation to stimulate economic activity. Now this you should know is not correct. जब economic activity stimulate करना होता है, whenever central banks want to stimulate economic activity, they decrease rates, right? So the borrowing becomes easier for the banks, and subsequently that benefit is transferred to the borrowers also, who are able to take loans from banks at easier rates. Okay, next, consider the following statements regarding state level inflation dynamics in India. Okay, inflation dynamics at the level of the states. States with higher average wage rates than the national average tends to experience higher inflation relative to national average. Okay, now this matlab states jiska wages, average wage is higher than the national average, they will experience higher inflation relative to national average. And this is true because the demand will be higher. लोगों के पास ज़्यादा पैसा तो demand will be higher, so the inflation will also be higher. GST implementation has been found to be significant driver of state level inflation differentials in India. Now this is not correct. Okay, and in fact, if you read the economic surveys that GST imposition has been found to be price neutral. ओके तो स्टेट लेवल इन्फ्लेशन डिफरेंशियल पे उसका कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ रहा है. स्टेट में क्या इन्फ्लेशन है, जीएसटी did not have that much effect as was expected before implementation of GDP. So it has been quite neutral. So this is not true. Third, the share of industrial output in a state's economy shows a negative association with state's inflation rate, reflecting the price dampening effect of manufacturing sector efficiencies. Okay, which means that अगर इंडस्ट्रियल आउटपुट स्टेट का ज़्यादा है तो इन्फ्लेशन वहाँ कम होगा, which means that जो मैन्युफैक्चरिंग सेक्टर है वो that is very efficient, and because of that it is able to control or provide the supply side necessary for meeting the demand side. Okay, so this is true. अगर demand in states where there is significant demand and at the same time the manufacturing sector is also doing well, तो overall inflation वहाँ कम होगा, right? So this is true. So the statements, which statements are correct? 1 and 3. All right. Next chapter is on agriculture and food management. Okay. Let's see question 1. Consider the following statements regarding Krishonatti Yojana. Okay, Krishonatti Yojana was announced during last budget, I believe, right? So it is an umbrella scheme that includes National Food Security and Nutrition Mission, which is true. National Food Security and Nutrition Mission. तो नेशनल फूड सिक्योरिटी मिशन का नाम अब नेशनल फूड सिक्योरिटी एंड न्यूट्रिशन मिशन है, and it is part of the Krishonatti Yojana, that is the umbrella scheme. Digital Agriculture Mission is one of the schemes under it, which is also true. Digital Agri Mission base ke under hai, and it includes a dedicated scheme for organic farming in the northeastern region. Okay, that is also true. जो northeastern region में, the name is Mission Organic Value Chain Development for Northeast Region, MOVCDNER. So that scheme also under Krishnatti Yojana. So all three are correct. Answer would be D. Next question. Consider the following statements regarding the e-National Agricultural Market ENAM. Okay, you all know ENAM. It was launched as a pan-India virtual trading platform to improve price discovery for farmers. Yeah, that was the goal with ENAM. सही है. Each APMC mandi under ENAM receives financial support for hardware, software, and quality assaying infrastructure. This is also true. ENAM के अंदर every APMC mandi across the country has to participate in the online auction, and for that they receive financial support from the government. Okay, so hardware, computers, internet connection, softwares, infrastructure, warehouses, everything is provided. Third, farmer producer organizations are not eligible to register on the ENAM platform. This is not true. क्यों ये true क्यों होगा? Even the FPOs, which are collectives of farmers, right? They are allowed. So this is wrong. Which of the above are correct? Is 1 and 2. B. With reference to Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana, consider the following statements. It provides coverage only against natural calamities, but not against pest attacks and diseases. Again, this is not true. क्यों नहीं करेगा? It should. And in fact, one of the features of Fasal Bima Yojana is it also provides coverage against pest attacks and diseases. Second, the Digi claim module under Fasal Bima Yojana enables direct payment to farmers through the PFMS, Public Financial Management System. This is also true. Under PFMS, you can get this is true. You can get direct payment. This is true. This is wrong. The yield estimation system based on technology, yes tech, uses remote sensing for crop yield assessment under the scheme. So this is also true. This is a technology used to estimate remote sensing used to estimate crop assessment, and accordingly the insurance is paid, right? So this is, so the correct answer would be 2 and 3. The Kisan Rin portal was launched to streamline agriculture credit. सही है. Which of the following function does it perform? Kisan Rin portal. Integrated scheduled commercial banks, regional rural banks, and cooperative banks on a single platform. Integrating scheduled commercial banks and all these banks in a single platform, yes, that is done by Kisan Rin portal. सारे जो banks हैं which gives credit, all is brought into a single platform so that the farmer person does not have to visit each of the branches banks for loans. Identifying multiple loan account held by a single farmer to prevent misuse of credit subsidies. Okay, this also happens a lot. A single farmer would have different accounts and different banks and would be taking loan from all the banks. तो वो नहीं होने देने के लिए किसान रिंग पोर्टल इज इन मतलब इसका यूज किया जाता है. And third is directly dispersing PM Kisan income support installment to farmers account. This is not true. उसका एक separate mechanism, direct benefit transfer has a separate mechanism, and Kisan Rain portal is not used for that. Okay. So answer would be B, 1 and 2. Consider the following statement regarding the issue of fertilizer use imbalance in India. Okay, fertilizer use imbalance is one of the major challenges today in Indian agriculture. So the NPK ratio in Indian agriculture has been moving away from agronomically recommended levels primarily due to overuse of nitrogenous fertilizers. Okay, this is true. So the recommended have 4:2:1. Okay, and right now you'll see that nitrogen is overused, particularly because there is subsidies on urea. Okay, so this is true. Second, neem coating of urea was introduced to improve agronomic efficiency by slowing nitrogen release. This is also true. Okay, neem coating urea, neem coated urea is used so that nitrogen release is slowed down, and uske karan the overall use of the fertilizer would be reduced and ज़्यादा जो agronomically recommended level है वहाँ तक जा सकेंगे. So this is true. Third, nutrient based subsidy pricing applies equally to urea and other fertilizers, correcting price distortions uniformly. This is not true. जो nutrient based subsidy है उसमें urea is not covered. Okay, and therefore that is the reason why urea is overused, because urea is still not covered under nutrient based subsidy and separately sell किया जाता है at a highly subsidized price, and therefore a lot of people, a lot of farmers, tend to overuse it. This is not true. So which are correct is B, 1 and 2. Consider the following statements about PACs, primary agriculture cooperative societies. Recent reforms allows PACs to diversify into over 25 activities, including input supply, storage, fuel retail. This is true. This is one of the reforms that has been brought where PACs is utilized for other works also. सही है. PACs are being computerized and integrated with cooperative banking network to enhance transparency. This is also true. This is also being done. And PACs can only engage in agriculture credit operations and are legally prohibited from food storage activity. This in fact true. In fact, 1 and 3 is contradictory. तो एक ही सही हो सकता है. Third is not correct. So the correct statement is B, 1 and 2. With reference to India's ethanol blending program, which of the following statements are correct? The administered price of maize-based ethanol is set higher than rice-based ethanol, creating a price incentive in favor of maize cultivation. This, in fact, is correct. Okay, जो maize-based ethanol है, uska price has been set higher so that more and more farmers are incentivized to cultivate maize. Ethanol blending program has contributed to a reduction in paddy cultivation area as originally intended. Okay, so originally it was intended कि लोग ज़्यादा maize cultivate करेंगे and paddy cultivation area would be reduced, but this has not happened. Okay, so in fact this has not happened. This is one of the failures of uh, this policy. Okay, policy का जो intention था, that has not materialized, and in fact what has happened is, rather than uh, paddy cultivation, cultivating farmers shifting to maize cultivation, uh, farmers who were producing pulses and oil seeds, they are more shifting to maize cultivation, which is a major challenge. All right. Third, biofuels mandates in major economies have historically shown potential to alter long-term cropping patterns when feedstock specific price incentives are not recalibrated. This again is true in जो international experience है, that has shown in major economies कि अगर biofuel mandates होता है and fuel is mixed with ethanol or other things, so they can alter long-term cropping patterns. So this is true. 1 and 3 is the correct answer. A. Consider the following statements about the submission on agricultural mechanization. SMAM provides assistance for establishing custom hiring centers to improve access to farm machinery. ठीक है, that is what this does. Fragmented holdings are identified as a constraint limiting the adoption of mechanization among Indian farmers. That is also true. So Indian farmers they have fragmented land holdings, and therefore hiring big machines are not very feasible. So this is true. SM directly transfers cash to individual farmers for purchasing farm equipments without any state government intermediation. This in fact is not true. In SMAM, center transfers money to the states, and then the states provide the custom hiring centers where the farmers can hire machines at a subsidized price. So the answer would be 1 and 2, B. Okay, let's start with chapter 7, services. Consider the following statements regarding India's services sector. The services sector has a low standard deviation of growth compared to manufacturing and industry, indicating lower volatility, which is true. If you look at the economic survey, this is true, but also just logically, the volatility in the services sector has been less. It has been very robust. India has, for a very long time, achieved very high rates of growth in the services sector. So this statement is true. As compared to the manufacturing and industry, in which there is a lot of volatility because a lot of global factors are also involved, and also domestic factors, as well as just natural conditions and COVID and all. Okay. Second, India follows a manufacturing-led growth path typical of countries at a comparable stage of development. Now, this is not correct. Okay. So generally, it is seen in economies, particularly mature economies, they shift from agriculture to manufacturing-led development, then services sector. India has, in fact, has a very unique experience in the sense that it has never really been a manufacturing powerhouse, and it has directly shifted from agriculture-led economy to services-led economy. The services sector is the largest recipient of FDI inflows in India. This is true. Okay. Out of all the FDI that is received by India, most of it is received by the services sector. So this is correct statement. The right would be 1 and 3. B. Consider the following statements about global capability centers, GCCs in India. Global capability centers are being established in India a lot. A lot of global companies, MNCs, are preferring India as a uh, location for setting up GCCs. GCCs are offshore units established by multinational firms to undertake technology development, engineering, analytics, business operations. Okay, correct. This is the definition of GCC. GCCs in India are currently limited to only tier 1 metropolitan cities. This is incorrect, right? And in fact, you'll notice a larger trend of GCCs shifting to tier 2 and tier 3 cities. And why is that happening? Is that it is much cheaper, right? And also after COVID, a lot of technically skilled people migrated to their hometowns, and it has become easier to employ skilled labor from tier 2 and tier 3 cities, and at the same time other costs are also low. So this is incorrect. More and more GCCs are now shifting to tier 2 and tier 3 cities. Third, over time, GCCs have evolved from support-oriented functions to undertaking core activities such as product development and cybersecurity operations. This is true. So if you see earlier years, you would hear terms like India is the back office of the world, right? So usually it used to have support-oriented functions like call centers, BPO, BPO functions, right? But now it has more taken a role in the front edge, product development, cybersecurity. So 1 and 3, B is correct. With reference to the orange economy, consider the following statements. So orange economy refers to the part of economy driven by creativity, culture, and intellectual property. This is true. In fact, orange economy, the word was also used by our Honorable Prime Minister, and it is generally for the creative economy. Like you'd notice influencers on social media or content creators on social media, YouTube, all that. That is part of orange economy, and not just online, but also offline concerts, singers, giving out arranging concerts and all that is also part of the orange economy. The concert economy is a subset of orange economy. Yes, this is true. Um, the orange economy exclusively covers digital content and excludes live entertainment activities. This is not wrong. So as already discussed, this is also live entertainment is actually a very important part of the orange economy. So answer would be 1 and 2. That is B. All right. Consider the following pairs of trade agreements and their key features relevant to India's services sector. Okay, let's see. India UK CETA. All right. Comprehensive Economic Trade Agreement is mutually mutual recognition agreements in nursing, accountancy, and architecture. Okay. Now this is true. जो इंडिया यूके का जो अग्रीमेंट हुआ है उसका ये all these are part of it. India Oman Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. So we have signed an agreement with Oman also. 100% FDI by Indian companies in major services sectors in Oman. Okay, this is also true. This is part of the Indian Oman agreement. And India EFTA. EFTA is, let me just quickly check. It's a European Union for sure, but I want to also tell you about it. It's European Free Trade Association, right? EFTA. TAPA has been signed, Trade and Economic Partnership Agreement, and market access through digital delivery, commercial presence, and temporary stay of key person. Okay, sounds correct. This is also true. So all these three are correct. So the correct answer would be C. All three. Okay. Next, which of the following best describes the concept of servicification of manufacturing? So this is a term that has been used in the economic survey. So you should know what is servicification of manufacturing. A, the complete replacement of manufacturing activities by services in an economy. So of course, this is a very extreme statement, cannot be right. Uh, this is not true. The growing integration of service inputs such as design, R&D, logistics, software into manufacturing value chains. So this is the definition of servicification of manufacturing. Okay, which means that within the manufacturing process, a lot of services are also used. Services like designing, R&D, logistics, software. So that is servicification. You'll see this trend that is developing in a lot of manufacturing sectors where the services have become an important aspect of it. So B is correct. C and D are not correct. Okay. Sixth, consider the following statements about PMI services. Okay. You must know from your study of the book, Indian Economy Handbook, that PMI is Purchasing Managers Index, is a high frequency indicator which serves as a measure or indication of how the services sector is doing. Okay. So statement one, the PMI services reading above 50 indicates expansion of service activity. This is true. Above 50 is expansion, below 50 is contraction of the sector. PMI services index measures only international sale of services and excludes domestic business. Of course, this is not going to be true अगर services sector को अच्छे से indicate करना है. This cannot be true. This is wrong. Okay. And new business intake is one of the components reflected in the PMI services framework. Again, this is true. बहुत सारे जो इसका जो सर्वे होता है, द सर्वे इज डन फॉर द मैनेजर्स हु आर एम्प्लॉयड इन क्रूशियल पोजीशंस इन द सर्विसेज सेक्टर, एंड उनको एक प्रोफॉर्मा और फॉर्म भेजा जाता है, एंड दे tell you what are the current conditions with respect to various aspects of this industry, और उसमें new business index is one of the important ones. Okay, so this correct. 6 is B, 1 and 3. Seventh, with reference to India's telecom sector, consider the following statement. India has developed indigenous 4G and 5G core network technologies. Yes, sahi hai. India has done that. Okay, and is now in the process of also developing 6G, right? India's tele density has declined in rural areas over the past decade due to infrastructure gaps. This is not true. In fact, India's tele density has increased, right? Infrastructure gaps अभी भी है rural areas में, but despite that, India's tele density, now more and more people in rural areas also are using mobile phones and internet. So this is not true. The steep fall in data prices in India has been a key driver of rising data consumption per subscriber. Okay, this again is very true. If you notice just what was the cost of data 10-15 years ago and the cost of data today, it is much cheaper, and that has been one of the primary reasons most of the people are now consuming a lot of data. It's true. Answer would be C, 1 and 3. Next question. Dedicated freight corridors in India are primarily associated with which of the following? Okay, should be a very easy question. Dedicated freight corridors, you all know. Facilitating express passenger train movement between major cities. ये नहीं है. It's related to freight, right? Freight is augmenting rail freight capacity, easing congestion, increasing freight movement speed. So this is the correct answer. Okay. Providing exclusive corridors for air cargo pre-processing near major ports. This is not true. Connecting inland container depots with seaports and with seaports via road. Again, this is not true too. DFC is B. Consider the following statement about India's real estate sector. The Real Estate Regulation and Development Act RERA was introduced to support greater formalization of the sector. ठीक है, सही statement है. That was the primary purpose of introducing RERA Act. The Affordable Housing Fund is a demand side measure to strengthen access to housing finance. This is also true. Okay, the affordable housing fund, that is a fund created, and that fund, through that fund, people will be able to take house loans at cheaper rate. तो एक demand create होगा real estate का. तो this is true. The Urban Infrastructure Development Fund supports housing demand exclusively in metropolitan cities. So now, of course, this is not true. Exclusively in metropolitan cities does not make sense. It will also support housing demand in tier 2 and tier 3 cities. So this is incorrect. Correct answer would be B, 1 and 2. Consider the following statement regarding relationship between services exports and state capacity. Okay. Services exports are described as system forcing because its failure create immediate macroeconomic consequences for the state. Okay, this is very important. Okay, जो services export है, that is not system forcing. Okay, because services, even though there is some failures in the state, the services export is the services sector are able to bypass that. Okay, or the goods exports are system forcing. Okay, because goods का जो trade होता है, exports and imports, that is a lot dependent on the infrastructure, state capacity, and even if there is certain faltering in some places, it leads to direct impact. So goods exports and imports are system forcing, whereas services exports are, in the economic survey, it is described as firm selective. Okay, because they are able to bypass the state capacity. So this is not correct. Good exporters are described as more likely to exert pressure on the state to improve infrastructure because their capital is sunk and exit is costly. This is true. Okay, because goods ka exports and imports mein a lot of investment has been already done, and uske karan sunk costs come into play, exit is costly, and therefore states can feel the pressure if there is some issue there. This is true. Services firms can bypass domestic institutional weakness more easily than goods manufacturing. Yes, this is true. So 2 and 3 is right. Answer would be B. Next chapter, chapter 8 is on the industrial sector. Let's see. Consider the following statements about quality control orders. Okay. Quality control orders are regulatory instruments that mandate conformity with specified quality standards for products, which is true. जो quality control orders होती है, which government issues from time to time for various sectors, it ensures that the quality of the produce, that is product that is being produced, is up to the mark, at least to the international level, so that India's credibility in the global market is maintained. Okay, तो quality control order उसका काम करती है. Also in the domestic economy also, yeah, the government wants to ensure that at least some quality is maintained. Okay, so this is true. QCOs, when extended to raw material and intermediate inputs, can raise input cost for downstream industries if domestic alternatives are not available, are unavailable. This again is also true, क्योंकि अगर क्वालिटी कंट्रोल ऑर्डर हम रॉ मटेरियल और इंटरमीडिएट आउटपुट इनपुट्स में लगाएंगे तो इट विल raise the input cost, because ensuring high quality raw materials and high quality intermediate will cost more. Okay, and once it is cost more, and if there are no alternatives available, then it will impact the competitiveness of our industries. So this is true. QCOs in India are issued by Bureau of International Standards. Okay, which is not true. BIS is one of the institutions that also issues QCOs, but there are other institutions also. Okay, FSSAI will be for food processing industry. There will be other institutions. So the answer would be B, 1 and 2. Consider the following pair of schemes and their objectives. PM Gati Shakti, multimodal logistic planning via unified geospatial spatial platform. This is true. PM Gati Shakti का यही काम है, that it helps in multimodal logistic planning, and it has a unified platform through which everyone can just seek information and make informed decisions. TREDS is trade receivables discounting system. It is for MSMEs, right? Address delayed payment challenge for MSMEs. तो ठीक है, ये भी correct है. And ANRF stands for Anusandhan National Research Foundation. So providing strategic directions and competitive funding for R&D. So this is also true. So all three are correct. Consider the following statement about the Manufacturing Purchasing Managers Index. तो PMI, जैसे PMI services होता है, वैसे PMI manufacturing भी होता है. And it's a similar measure. So a PMI reading above 50 indicates expansion in manufacturing activity, and below 50 indicates contraction. So this is true. PMI is a forward-looking indicator based on surveys of purchasing managers in manufacturing firms. This again is true, right? It is a forward-looking, which means that surveys done of purchasing managers who are occupying critical positions in the manufacturing sector, and they give information about everything, how much is the bookings for the next year, what is the demand, how much new orders have come, and all that. All these are surveyed and PMI is calculated. So this is true. PMI is computed and published by RBI on a monthly basis. So this is incorrect. RBI calculate nahi karta hai, it is published by HSBC. Okay, HSBC in association with Standard and Poor Global. Okay, that publishes PMI. So this is not true. Answer would be A, 1 and 2. With reference to India's semiconductor ecosystem, consider the following statements. ISM, India Semiconductor Mission, was launched to build domestic capacity in design, manufacturing, and packaging of semiconductors. ठीक है? Sounds correct. There is nothing wrong with it. This is right. The design linked incentive scheme under ISM encourages domestic chip design. Again, this is true. Okay, so government provides a design linked incentive schemes. तो अगर कोई company है which is producing domestic chip designs or doing R&D here, then they get some incentives from the government. So this is true. Semiconductor chip design is less R&D intensive than pharmaceutical product development. Okay, this in fact is not correct. Okay, semiconductor is highly R&D intensive. उसमें बहुत सारा research and development लगता है, even more than the pharmaceutical product are also very R&D intensive, but semiconductor is even more than that. So the answer would be A, 1 and 2. All right, ठीक है. Match the following government schemes with their respective sectors. कौन से government schemes किस sectors में काम कर रहे हैं? PLI ACC schemes. Okay, so PLI is of course is production linked incentive, or ACC is advanced chemistry cells. Okay, तो ये किससे होगा? It will be electric vehicles and battery storage, right? So A is 2. Mission coking coal of course is steel. Okay, so स्टील को स्टेनलेस स्टील बनाने में आई थिंक कोकिंग कोल यूज़ किया जाता है. सो दैट इज 3. PM मित्रा. Okay, PM Mitra stands for Mega Integrated Textile Region and Apparel Parks. So that is PM Mitra is with textiles. 4. And National Technical Textile Mission is also textiles. Okay, 4. So answer would be A2, B3, C4, D4. Answer would be A. Okay, so just keep in mind कि ऐसा भी trick use कर सकते हैं. So there is no schemes here linked to pharmaceuticals, and textiles के 2 schemes बता दिए, तो ऐसा भी हो सकता है कभी कभी. All right, consider the following statements about Anushandhan National Research Foundation, ANRF. ANRF was established under an act of parliament specifically for this purpose. Okay, now this is true. जो ANRF एक्ट था 2023 में पास हुआ, it was through this act this foundation has been created. ANRF is designed to provide competitive funding and collaboration pathways across industry, academia, and government. Yes, so that is the purpose of ANRF. So this is also true. ANRF replaces all existing science funding bodies such as DST, CSIR, which have been dissolved. This is not true. Okay, so NRF is working in complement of already existing Department of Science and Technology, CSIR. So this is not true. Answer would be C, 1 and 2. Okay, next is chapter 9, investment and infrastructure. Okay, question 1, consider the following statements regarding PPP, public-private partnership models used in India's infrastructure sector. So hybrid annuity model is a variant of the build, operate, transfer framework. Okay, हाइब्रिड एन्युटी मॉडल एक वेरिएंट है बीओटी फ्रेमवर्क का. इज दैट ट्रू? दैट इज नॉट ट्रू, राइट? बिल्ड ऑपरेट ट्रांसफर इज एंटायरली डिफरेंट. बिल्ड ऑपरेट ट्रांसफर का वेरिएशंस होते हैं. दैट इज बिल्ड ऑपरेट ट्रांसफर टोल और एक एन्युटी बीओटी एन्युटी होता है. बट हाइब्रिड एन्युटी मॉडल इज एंटायरली सेपरेट, राइट? So it is not a variant, so this is not correct. In the BOT toll and BOT annuity variant, the key distinction lies in the allocation of traffic risk, okay, which is true, right? Build operate toll mein the private sector, private party will collect tolls, whereas in build operate toll annuity mein the government will give an annual lump sum amount of money also to the private party. So traffic risk में in the first instance the private party is taking more risk, second वाले में slightly less risk. So this is correct. Toll operate transfer model involves private players building new greenfield infrastructure. Is that true? Toll operate transfer. So the private party is operating, collecting toll, operating, and then after that it is transferring. So वो greenfield infrastructure बना रही है? Not true, right? It is generally involves already जो operational assets हैं brownfield, उसमें ये use किया जाता है and not greenfield. So this is not correct. Answer would be B. 2 only. Consider the following pair of waterway related initiatives and their descriptions. Jalwahak scheme. Jalwahak scheme provides incentives for scheduled cargo services on select national waterways. So this is true. This is the work of function of Jalwahak scheme. Naudarshika is a unified platform for vessels and crew registry. This is not true, right? Naudarshika का काम है for seamless vessel movement and navigation safety. Okay, जो vessel and crew registry का काम करता है, that is Jalyan and Navik. So these are the initiatives that you definitely should look. And I've already provided the summary of the economic survey, so you can take a look at all the initiatives that are there and know what function and what is the description of which initiatives. So this is not correct. Jal Samriddhi. Jal Samriddhi is portal to streamline NOC application, no objection certificate application for jetty terminal construction. So this is again is true. So the answer would be B, 1 and 3. All right. The PM Gati Shakti National Master Plan is primarily characterized by which of the following? It is a GIS enabled multimodal infrastructure planning platform. This is true. ये सही है. GIS enabled है, multimodal infrastructure planning platform है PM Gati Shakti. It restricts access to geospatial data exclusively to government agencies. सिर्फ government agencies का data use कर सकती है. This is not true. Okay, जो PM Gati Shakti National Master Plan है, even the private agencies can use that data. Okay, so this is specifically for democratization of the data. So this platform encourages that. So this is not true. It aims to reduce transaction cost and execution risk in the infrastructure planning. Yes, of course, that is the function. That is the objective. The 1 and 3, B would be the answer. Consider the following statement about India energy stack. It is conceived as a centralized database to consolidate all energy sector data under a single government authority. Okay, a single government authority, and it is a centralized database of all energy data. Now, both these are not true. It is not a centralized platform. जो इंडिया एनर्जी स्टैक है सेंट्रलाइज्ड प्लेटफॉर्म नहीं है, एंड जो भी इसका जो डेटा है दैट इज़ नॉट गवर्नमेंट डेटा, द डेटा रिमेन्स एट द राइटफुल ओनर्स, जो उस डेटा के ओनर्स है उनके पास ही रहता है, एंड इज शेयर्ड ऑन अ कंसेंट बेस्ड मैकेनिज्म. So the owners of that data remains the owners of the data, but they share that data on a basis of consent. Okay, they give consent to sharing of the data. So this is not correct. Second is it aims to enable peer-to-peer electricity trading at scale across utility jurisdiction. This is correct. Okay, ये जो इंडिया एनर्जी स्टैक है उससे पीयर टू पीयर इलेक्ट्रिसिटी ट्रेडिंग हो सकता है. REC Limited has been designated as the nodal agency for its design and implementation. So again, this is true. Okay, REC Limited hai, that is designated as the nodal agency. So the answer would be C, 2 and 3. With reference to India's renewable energy sector, consider the following. India ranks third globally in overall renewable energy capacity and installed solar capacity. Okay, this is true. जो India है, that is in fact third in terms of overall renewable energy capacity and installed solar capacity. Large hydropower constitutes the largest share of India's total installed renewable energy capacity. Is that true? That is not true, right? Large hydropower does not constitute. In fact, solar is or almost 50%. Around 52% is solar, and large hydropower is only around 20%. So this statement is not correct. Battery energy storage systems and pump storage hydropower are considered important for addressing the variability inherent in renewable energy sources. This is correct क्योंकि जो renewable energy sources है they are there is variability, right? For example, solar will only be functional during the day, during the night there is no sunlight. Similarly for wind, only when wind is flowing in a certain speed, more than a certain speed, it is useful. So in that case, battery storage systems or these sort of things come into become very important. This is correct. So answer would be B, 1 and 3. Consider the following statement about the Kochi Water Metro. Okay, Kochi Water Metro has been in news, is also mentioned in the economic survey. It is institutionalized through a SPV, special purpose vehicle, in which government of Kerala holds a majority equity stake. Yes, this is true. Kochi Water Metro has been institutionalized through an SPV और उसमें government of Kerala का 74% stake है. All right, so this is true. The ferries deployed are powered by conventional diesel engines to ensure reliability. Okay, this is not true. Diesel engine does not have diesel, the polluting diesel engine, that is not there. It has a lithium titanate oxide LTO batteries जो electric का hybrid है, right? And it's not diesel, so this is not correct. Third, a water metro network offers significant cost advantage over rail-based metro systems, primarily by minimizing land acquisition cost. This is also true. Okay, land acquisition cost नहीं है. At the same time, infrastructure creation का भी cost काफ़ी कम है. In fact, around 1/10 of what a normal metro station would cost. So this is correct. So answer would be B, 1 and 3. Consider the following statement about the Namami Gange program. Namami Gange program के statements है, it has pioneered the hybrid annuity model PPP for STPs, sewage treatment plants, linking payment to verified performance. This in fact is true. This is what is happening in the Namami Gange program within private public partnership में hybrid annuity model is being implemented. All right. The one city, one operator model under the program has been institutionalized in cities like Kanpur and Prayagraj. So this is also true. If you read the economic survey, one city, one operator model is adopted. Okay, तो एक city में एक ही operator होगा. and this has been institutionalized in Kanpur and Prayagraj. The program focuses exclusively on pollution abatement and does not address the ecological restoration. So yeah, of course, does not sound correct. It will do pollution abatement also, but also uh, ecological restoration. Okay, and it is also worked on reintroduction of the red-crowned roof turtle, monitoring of the Gangetic dolphins, increasing their population. तो वो सारा काम भी हो रहा है. So answer would be B, 1 and okay. Chapter 10 is on environment and climate change. Consider the following statements regarding India's carbon credit trading scheme. Okay. इंडिया का कार्बन क्रेडिट ट्रेडिंग स्कीम है. It operates through a dual mechanism incorporating mandatory compliance and voluntary offset approach. So it's a dual mechanism. This statement is correct. It has a dual mechanism. Some of the sectors have a mandatory compliance and other have a voluntary offset approach. So this is true. Both systems are in place. Second, under the compliance mechanism, entities that exceed their emission intensity targets must buy carbon credit certificates from the market. Okay. This is not correct, right? Entities that exceed their emission intensity targets. तो अगर emission intensity targets को exceed कर गया तो they will earn credit. And if they fall short of targets, then they must buy carbon credit certificates. So ulta likha hua hai, this is wrong. The voluntary offset mechanism is open only to entities already covered under compliance framework. This is again not correct. The offset mechanism is open to the non-obligated entities, right? So entities which are outside the compliance framework. जो compliance framework है, they are not voluntary. They have to mandatorily be compliant. But जो outside है, non-obligated entities, उनको voluntary offset mechanism के अंदर रखा गया है. So the answer has to be is, and the answer is A, only one. Okay. Consider the following statement regarding mission life. Okay. Life stands for lifestyle for environment. It was introduced at COP26 in Glasgow 2021. Okay. So this is true. Glasgow में COP26 हुआ था 21 में, and at that point our honorable prime minister introduced mission life. Okay. Mission life is an integral part of India's NDC, nationally determined contribution. Again, it is true. India का integral part है, and it focuses exclusively on government-led supply-side interventions to reduce emissions. So this is in fact not true. If you know about Mission Life emphasizes behavioral changes, right? And citizen participation is an important aspect of Mission Life, and not just government-led supply-side interventions. तो ये सबके लिए applicable है. So this is not true. Answer would be A, 1 and 2. Question 3. Which of the following correctly describes the concept of greenium? Okay, greenium is a word that is used in your economic survey. तो उसका क्या मतलब होता है? In the context of sovereign bond market. Okay. A. The premium charged by multilateral banks on green infrastructure loans to developing countries. तो ऐसा कुछ होता नहीं है. Why would multilateral banks charge a premium on green infra? In fact, they would be discounting, right? So this is not right. The additional fiscal cost borne by government issuing green bonds compared to conventional bonds. So this is also not true. This is not what is greenium. The yield advantage, lower yield that green bonds enjoy over comparable conventional bonds. Okay, so this is greenium. Okay, and, you will see that the green bonds have a lower borrowing cost. They have a yield advantage. तो अगर किसी को ग्रीन प्रोजेक्ट के लिए मनी रेज करना होता है तो दे कैन इशू ग्रीन बॉन्ड्स, एंड ग्रीन बॉन्ड्स यूजुअली विल हैव अ lower borrowing cost compared to the conventional bonds, even if the issuer is same. Okay, and what this reflects is that the investor is willing to accept lower returns if the money is used for green projects. Okay, so that is the concept of greenium. So the correct answer is C. Consider the following statements about the Shanti Act 2025. Okay, Shanti Act 2025. Shanti Act का full form भी होता है. If you, I can quickly, just because even I don't remember. Shanti Act. Shanti Act stands for the Sustainable Harnessing and Advancement of Nuclear Energy for Transforming India Act 2025. So mainly it is for nuclear energy. Shanti Act. So it enables private sector and state government participation in nuclear power generation previously not permitted. Okay, in fact this is true. पहले जो nuclear power था उसमें only the central government was allowed to participate, but now it has been opened up for private sector as well as the state government. So that is a new development that has happened in this particular sector. Second, it completely removes the liability framework for nuclear damage to encourage private investment. Now, even if you think logically, will it completely remove the liability framework? Of course not, right? A liability framework remove नहीं किया है. What it has done is it has established a graded liability framework. Okay, so it does not dilute victim compensation, बट थोड़ा सा ग्रेडेड रीस्ट्रक्चरल लायबिलिटी किया है. तो लायबिलिटी विल बी रिड्यूस्ड पर्टिकुलरली फॉर द प्राइवेट सेक्टर, बट इट हैज़ नॉट बीन एलिमिनेटेड. सो दिस स्टेटमेंट इज रॉन्ग. It consolidates Atomic Energy Act 1962 and civil liability for nuclear damage 2010. This is correct. So this has happened. So the right answer would be 1 and 3, B. Which of the following best describes the entropy effect in the context of energy transition policy? Okay, energy transition policy में entropy effect क्या होता है? Let's see the options. The tendency of renewable energy systems to become less efficient as grid penetration increases. This is not true. ऐसा कुछ नहीं होता है. The phenomenon where well-intentioned transition strategies inadvertently increase systemic volatility without adequate buffers and redundancies. Okay, so this in fact is the correct answer. This is also known as what is an entropy effect. So what has happened in what has been noticed in countries which has adopted energy transition quite rapidly is that if the energy transition is at the same time not accompanied by proper infrastructure like grid buffer, storage, institutional capacity, if all those things are not present, then there is greater volatility, right? There will be greater volatility with respect to the energy, and particularly this is witnessed in यूरोपियन कंट्रीज जैसे नेदरलैंड्स हो गया, स्पेन हो गया. वहाँ पे ये एंट्रोपी इफेक्ट देखने को मिल रहा है. सो दिस अंडरस्कोर्स द इम्पोर्टेंस की जब भी एनर्जी ट्रांजिशन किया जाए, so there should be creation of infrastructure. Okay, and properly both things should go together. Creation of capacity, infrastructure, at the same time transition from um, fossil fuel and energy to green energy. So that should happen side by side. So that is one of the lessons that can be learned from the experiences of European countries. So the answer is B. All right. Let's come to chapter 11. Chapter 11 is on education and health. Okay, let's see. Consider the following statements regarding National Education Policy of 2020. Okay, NEP 2020 is the first major education reform in India in 34 years. This is correct. Okay, so the last major education reforms was 34 years ago in 1986. Now it has come in 2020. NEP targets achieving 100% gross enrollment ratio from pre-primary to secondary level by 2035. Okay, now is that true? It thoda sa slightly tricky hai because this target is right, but the target year is 2030. Okay, and not 2035. तो काफी tricky है. You may think that this is correct, but स्लाइट चेंजेस देयर. ऐसा भी कभी कभी हो जाता है. ऐसा ट्रैप्स भी डालती है यूपीएससी. सो दिस नॉट करेक्ट. NEP's 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4 schooling structures covers children from 3 to 18 years. Okay, this is true. This is the schooling structure that is there in the national education policy of 2020. पहले 5 years का होगा, then 3 years plus 3 years and then 4 years का ये schooling. अभी right now it is 10 plus 2, right? But it has been changed to 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4. All right, so the correct answer would be 1 and 3, that is B. Consider the following pairs. So schemes दिया हुआ है, purposes दिया हुआ है. Parak. Parak is performance assessment and holistic development of students. This is correct. Ullas. Ullas is for adult literacy program. Again, this is correct. The full form of Ullas is understanding of lifelong learning for all in society. So this is also correct. Nipun Bharat is for foundational literacy and numeracy for early grades. This is true. And Diksha is digital infrastructure for teacher training and content sharing. So Diksha is essentially for digital infrastructure. इसका full form होता है digital infrastructure for knowledge sharing platform. And this purpose is correct. So all 4 are correct. So the answer would be D. With reference to APAR ID system in India, consider the following statements. Okay, APAR stands for Automated Permanent Academic Account Registry. Okay, ये सही है. APAR का मतलब होता है Automated Permanent Academic Account Registry. Okay, and essentially एक आधार based authentication है जिसमें your academic record will be stored and tracked. Okay, so it gives you flexibility to study different streams from different colleges, different places. So that is the benefit of it. It uses Aadhaar based authentication to digitally store academic record. This is also true. And it is applicable only for higher education institution and not for school level education. This is incorrect. जो अपार आईडी है वो ट्रैक करता है अक्रॉस स्कूल्स, हायर एजुकेशन, लोअर एजुकेशन, स्किल एजुकेशन. तो this is incorrect. This is not correct, and the answer would be B, 1 and 2. Consider the following statements regarding India's epidemiological transition. ओके, एपिडेमियोलॉजिकल ट्रांजिशन का मतलब होता है कि द इंसिडेंसेस ऑफ डिफरेंट काइंड्स ऑफ डिजीज. ओके, तो अर्लियर कौन से डिजीज ज़्यादा प्रेवलेंट थे, अब कौन से ज़्यादा है. वन इज नॉन कम्युनिकेबल डिजीज नाउ अकाउंट फॉर मोर देन हाफ ऑफ ऑल डेथ्स इन इंडिया. ओके, दिस in fact is true. So earlier, in earlier days, when India was slightly poorer and the health facilities was not as much, तो उस समय कम्युनिकेबल डिजीज से ज़्यादा लोग मरते थे. अब नाउ द प्रेजेंट सिचुएशन इज people die more from non-communicable diseases. Non-communicable diseases like diabetes or cancer or these kind of diseases, right? Which are lifestyle diseases. Second, India's epidemiological transition follows a classic linear shift from communicable to non-communicable disease, with communicable diseases now largely eliminated. Is that true? Of course, that is not true. ये गलत है. अभी eliminate नहीं हुआ है. The still there is lot of communicable disease that is present, particularly disease like TB, right? And malaria, dengue, or we all see that these kind of communicable disease is still very prevalent. So as a classical linear shift is not there, it is much more nuanced. But still the non-communicable disease account for 57% and communicable disease account for 43% of all disease related deaths. Okay. Third, cardiovascular diseases are the leading cause of death for both men and women in India. This is in fact is true. So cardiovascular diseases that is the leading cause of death. So answer would be B, 1 and 3. Fifth, gender parity index in the context of higher education is best described as gender parity index. The ratio of female literacy rate to male literacy rate in a given state. Is that gender parity index? Second, the ratio of female gross enrollment ratio to male gross enrollment ratio. तो अगर technically जाया जाए तो this is the correct answer. So again, gender parity index, the formula is something that you will have to know, and it's mentioned in the economic survey. So you can look it up in the summary that I have provided. It will be there. Okay. All right. Next question. Consider the following statements about the professor of practice concept in Indian higher education. Professor of practice concept. What exactly is it? The POP category was introduced by UGC and AICT to allow industry professionals to contribute to teaching in higher education institutions. Okay, so professor of practice matlab people who are practicing in the industry. Okay, who are not just teaching in the institutions, colleges or universities, but are who are actually professionals who are involved in the sector, who are practicing or who are doing some business, and they from time to time can come to the colleges and give their practical experience to the students. So this is correct. Okay, a professor of practice can be appointed for an indefinite period without any tenure restriction. तो ये तो सही नहीं होगा. A professor of practice who is an industry professional cannot be appointed for an indefinite period. It will be appointed for a definite period. Okay, and that definite period is typically 3 years. Okay, 3 or 4 years, but not indefinite. So this is not right. A professor of practice initiative aims to bridge the gap between industry requirement and academic curriculum. Of course, this is true. So the answer would be B, 1 and 3. Next question. Consider the following statements regarding the gaming disorder as recognized by the World Health Organization. The World Health Organization ने एक नया disorder recognize किया है, that is gaming disorder. The WHO recognized gaming disorder as a mental health condition under the International Classification of Diseases. This is true. Okay. This is just fact. It has been given in your economic survey. It is a mental health condition under the ICD-11. Gaming disorder is characterized by impaired control over gaming, prioritization of gaming over other activities, and continued play despite negative consequences. Though this is also true. So this is also similar to addiction, right? When you do a lot of gaming on mobile phones or in your computer, it affects various your sensories. You start prioritizing other activities over gaming over other activities, and there are negative consequences, but still you cannot stop yourself. So this is true. India has enacted legislation banning all forms of online gaming to address gaming disorder among youth. This is not true. India has banned gaming, but that is a particular kind of gaming in which money is involved. Okay, so there was an India Online Gaming Regulation Act which was enacted last year. So it bans online money games only. So games in which sort of like gambling, okay, which involves wagering, and that has been banned, but all the online games has not been banned. All right. Next chapter is chapter 12, employment and skill development. Let's see. Consider the following statements regarding the eShram portal. It serves as a national database of unorganized workers, including gig and platform workers. Okay, seems correct. Or even the unorganized workers, gig workers, platform workers can register in the eShram portal. Each registrant is assigned a universal account number linked to their Aadhaar and mobile number. So this is also correct. Everyone gets a universal account number. Only workers in the unorganized sectors are eligible for registration in the portal. So this is not true. Unorganized sectors are eligible, but in even the workers in the organized sectors, they are also eligible. And this is not correct. So answer is A. With reference to the Code on Social Security 2020, consider the following statements. Code on Social Security, CSS 2020. So 29 labor laws has been consolidated into 4 labor codes. Okay, you should know that, all the 4 labor codes. So in this question is talking about Code on Social Security. It formally recognizes gig workers as a distinct category of workers. This has been quite in news also, and in fact is correct. जो gig workers है और platform workers who work on e-commerce like Swiggy, Zomato, Uber, Ola, all they are categorized as a distinct category of workers and they are recognized now. The definition of gig worker as a person who participates in work arrangement and earns from such activities outside of traditional employer-employee relationship. ठीक है, this is also true. Now with of course new technologies coming on, digital technology, जो traditional employer-employee relationship होता है, that has undergone a change. Okay, now there is no traditional employer-employee relationship. Now there is more of a partnership. Even if you see Zomato or Swiggy, they call their delivery persons, they are called partners and not employees, right? So वो change हो गया. This is true. It mandates that aggregator contribute a fixed percentage of their annual turnover towards social security funds for gig workers. तो ये भी correct है, right? So the Code on Social Security, it mandates that at least 1 or 2% of the annual turnover should be contributed towards life insurance or health insurance or pensions of these gig workers. So all these three are correct. Consider the following pairs, schemes and associated features. PM Vishkarma Kaushal Samman. Okay. Supports 18 traditional trades with skill upgradation and collateral free loans. तो विश्वकर्मा कौशल सम्मान में यही होता है, जो ट्रेडिशनल ट्रेड्स है उसमें उनका सर्टिफिकेशन होता है, स्किल अपग्रेडेशन होता है. सो दैट इज ट्रू. स्किल इंडिया डिजिटल हब is a centralized platform for skilled education, employment, and entrepreneurship under MSD. This is also true. Ministry of Skill Development and Enterprise के अंदर it's a centralized platform. तो ये सही है. National Career Service Portal launched as one-stop solution for job seekers and employers. So this is also true. National Career Service के अंदर all the job seekers and the job employers, they all come together in a single platform. So the correct answer is all three. Fourth, the term longevity dividend refers to. The longevity dividend is a term that is used in your economic survey. क्या मतलब होता है इसका? The economic growth potential arising from a large working age population outnumbering the non-working age population. This is not true. मतलब ये situation is correct. This is happening, but that is not longevity per dividend. B, the economic and social benefit gained from longer, healthier, and more productive lives. This is the correct definition of longevity dividend. So, as there is a availability of better health facilities, improved diets, uh, uh, people are living longer, healthier lives, they are more productive, and this is giving rise to their more productivity, and that is longevity dividend. All right. Fifth, consider the following statements regarding the 4 labor codes notified in India. Code on Wages 2019 provides for national floor wage. Okay, this is true कि जो एक national floor wage लाया गया है through Code of Wages. Industrial Relations Code 2020 provides for portable social security for migrant workers. Okay. Industrial Relations Code 2020 provide for portable social security for migrant workers. So again, do you think through even logical thinking is this a correct statement? because this has happened, but this is not under industrial relations code, right? Code on social security के अंदर ये provision है, so this is incorrect. The Occupational Safety, Health and Working Conditions Code 2020 mandates appointment letters for all workers. This is true. Okay. Appointment letter for all workers is made mandatory through this code. So answer would be A, 1 and 3. Next, consider the following statement about India's gig economy. Gig workers in India have traditionally been classified as informal labor and were largely not covered by existing labor laws prior to Code of Social Security 2020. This is largely true, right? Because gig workers is a kind of new jobs which has come into existence very recently after coming of these e-commerce platforms, digital technology, all that. So recently recognized with this is true. Second is gig work is primarily characterized by ongoing fixed location employment with a direct bipartite employer-employee relationship. So this is exactly opposite. ये तो बिल्कुल ही गलत है. Fixed location employment नहीं है ये. It is task based, location independent, and generally tripartite relationship between employer, the platform, and the worker. So this is not true. The largest share of India's gig workforce is concentrated in the e-commerce and logistics sectors. This is true. Okay. E-commerce like your online platforms, food delivery platforms or ride sharing platforms, all these are वहाँ पे सबसे ज़्यादा gig work होता है. So the answer is B, 1 and 3. Seventh, the pink tax in the context of urban mobility refers to. Okay. Pink tax generally you will hear it is not it is not a formal term. It is pink tax. The term is used very informally. Like in context of urban mobility, it means that uh, let's see, a government levy imposed on women's transportation service to fund safety infrastructure. This is not true. Government will never do that कि अलग से पैसा ले so that women transport is more safer. The additional amount women effectively pay for transportation due to gender specific safety needs unaddressed by the transport system. This in fact is the correct statement. So what happens is that many transport, particularly maybe late at night or maybe some transport which goes through certain routes, women end up paying a larger amount to make sure that their safety concerns are addressed, which is right now not being addressed by the current transport system. So that is the pink tax. Okay, and in general the pink tax is used for anything, any services or any product where women have to pay a higher amount, and that you will notice in a lot of goods and services, right? Even in some simple products like a shaving razor, right? The razor is used by both men and women, but you generally notice that the razor of women is priced higher than the razor for men, even though the quality of those of both is absolutely the same. Similarly, for other products also you can notice this. So that is pink tax. All right. Consider the following statements regarding India's national credit framework. Okay. India's national credit framework, it enables accumulation and transfer of credit across academic, vocational, and work-based learning routes, which is exactly right. That is the purpose of developing national credit framework. It is implemented by Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship exclusively. Does the MSD do it exclusively? Not really. Okay. There are other ministries also involved, like Ministry of Education is also involved. So ये जो National Credit Framework है, it is part of National Education Policy of 2020, but काफ़ी सारे ministry involved हैं इसमें. So this is not true. It supports multiple entry-exit provisions, allowing learners to re-enter higher education with prior credits. So that is again one of the objectives, right? that people can re-enter higher education. So this is true. Answer would be B, 1 and 3. Next question. Skill impact bonds implemented in India are best described as. What is skill impact bonds? Government bonds issued to raise funds exclusively for upgrading industrial training institutes? No, this is not correct. Performance linked payment mechanisms that link funding to independently verified placement and retention outcomes. So this is true. Okay. So skill impact bonds is where the payment is outcome based. So suppose a certain entity floats impact bonds and raises a lot of money, then if that objective of that enterprise, the objective of raising that money is fulfilled. Okay, suppose the objective is to increase the literacy rate in a certain region. So if those objectives are fulfilled, then the government also uh, helps finance those skill impact bonds. So those kind of things happen. So the answer would be B. Okay. Next, let's go to chapter 13, Rural Development and Social Progress. Consider the following statements regarding multi-dimensional poverty index. So multi-dimensional poverty index is developed by Niti Aayog, right? It measures poverty by considering monetary income as the primary indicator. Is that true? That is not true, right? Monetary income used to be the earlier method. इसमें बहुत सारे dimensions हैं, तो generally जो non monetary measure है वो use किया जाता है, right? Like health, education, living standard. So this is not true. Measured by Niti Aayog, this is correct. Captures deprivation in health, education, living standards. This is correct. So the answer would be B. Consider the following pairs. सतत जीविकोपार्जन योजना is Bihar, associated state is Bihar and targets ultra poor women. This is true. So there are a few schemes that are mentioned in the economic survey. Again, you'll have to know that. Kudumbashri is Kerala, community monitoring and service provider. This is true. Samaveshi Ajivika Yojana is Ministry of Rural Development under Day National Rural Livelihood Mission, right? ये भी सही है. तो all three are correctly matched. Consider the following statement about Swamitwa scheme. All right. The Swamitwa scheme is the full form is Survey of Villages, Abadi and Mapping with Improvised Technology in Village Areas. ठीक है. You don't have to remember the whole full form, but at least you know what it does. Okay, it uses drones technology to map rural properties and issues legal ownership cards. This is true. ये drone use करती है. It helps reduce land disputes and facilitates access to bank loans for villages. This is also true. Once you have, undisputed ownership, credit, evidence of ownership of certain lands, then of course you'll find it easier to get bank loans. This is correct. It is implemented by Ministry of Rural Development. Now, is that true? This is not true. It is implemented by Ministry of Panchayati Raj. So you should keep that in mind. So the correct answer is A, 1 and 2. Which of the following features correctly distinguish between Viksit Bharat Ji Ramji Act 2025 from Manrega? Okay, so of course you must have read the news that Manrega has been replaced by Viksit Bharat. Ji Ramji, what is the full form of Ji Ramji? Just a second. Stands for Viksit Bharat Guarantee for Rozgar and Ajivika Mission, Gramin. Okay, all right. So VB Ramji guarantees 125 days of wage employment as per rural household compared to 100 days under Manrega. Is that true? This is true. Okay. So again, this is something that you must know. because one of the probable questions, I think, for the prelims examination, because this is a big change that has been brought in Manrega, which is one of the most flagship schemes of the government. Okay, most important. Second, VB Ramji removes disentitlement clauses, reinforcing right-based entitlement. So this is also true. Right-based entitlement आ रहा है इससे. Under VB Ramji, states can notify up to 60 days as a pause windows during peak sowing and harvesting season. Yes, this is also one of the provisions. So this is true. And the administrative expenditure ceiling has been increased from 6% to 9% under VB Ramji. This is also true. जो administrative expenditure होता है, right? That is money that is not paid to the workers but spent in administration. Okay, that is increased to 9%. This is true. So the answer is all 1, 2, 3, and 4. The Panchayat Advancement Index is what is it? Is it developed by Ministry of Panchayati Raj to measure progress of Gram Panchayats on localized SDGs. This is correct. This is why Panchayat Advancement Index is devised to localize SDGs को. Of course, SDG cannot be uniform across the country, right? Therefore, SDGs has been localized, and उसको measure करने के लिए Ministry of Panchayati Raj has devised Panchayati Advancement Index, Panchayat Advancement Index. Second, built on indicators organized across 9 local SDG themes, including good governance, women-friendly panchayat, clean and green panchayat. Yes, this is also true. And mandatory for all gram panchayats to achieve a minimum score annually as a condition for receiving Central Finance Commission grants. Okay, is it mandatory? No, it is not mandatory. Okay, of course some incentives would be there, but ऐसा कुछ mandatory नहीं है, so this is not correct, and the answer would be B1 and 2. Consider the following statements about the Deen Dayal Antyodaya Yojana, National Rural Livelihood Mission, DNRLM. Its core approach is community driven and empowering rural women through self-help groups. ठीक है, this is correct. National Rural Livelihood Mission में यही होता है. Community resource persons, CRPs, are trained SHG members who provide grassroots support in areas like agriculture, banking, nutrition. This again is true. Women SHG members are trained to be community resource persons. The mission targets both rural men and women equally as primary beneficiaries. This is not true, right? It is particularly women focused. The answer would be B, 1 and 2. The Namaste scheme launched in 2023 is primarily associated with. Okay, so Namaste scheme. What is Namaste scheme? If you know the full form, it stands for National Action for Mechanized Sanitation Ecosystem. Okay, that is Namaste scheme. So once these kind of name comes, you should know what uh, the full form exactly. You don't have to know the full form, but what is you should at least know कि किस area में ये वाला scheme launch किया गया, right? And it is for formalization and rehabilitation of sewer and septic tank workers engaged in hazardous cleaning. तो उनके लिए ये है. So the B option is correct. Consider the following statement about the Digital India Land Records Modernization Program, DILRMP. It aims to digitalize record of rights in rural areas and computerize property registration. ठीक है, sounds good, sounds true, सही है ये. Bhu Aadhaar is a unique land parcel identification number assigned to individual land parcels under this program. तो ये भी सही है. Just as Aadhaar card is for individuals, Bhu Aadhaar is for land parcels, for land. So this is true. The program was launched as part of National Rural Livelihood Mission to improve rural credit score. Is that true? This is not true. Okay. It is implemented by Department of Land Resource under Ministry of Rural Development independently of National Rural Livelihood Mission. So this is not true. So the answer is 1 and 2. All right. Next, let's come to chapter 14. Now, here, okay, the last four chapters in the economic survey are mostly analysis and recommendations of the economic survey, and therefore not much data to frame prelims questions from, but still I have tried to frame a few. So let's see. Chapter 14, evolution of the AI ecosystem in India. So यहाँ से एक क्वेश्चन बनाया मैंने. Which of the following best explains why social psychophancy is widely deployed AI models in widely deployed AI models is considered a safety risk? Okay. Social psychophancy. What exactly is social psychophancy? Social psychophancy वो होता है, maybe you must have noticed while using any of the AI tools, is that it is very over affirming of the user's actions and viewpoints. So whatever you say, it will say a very good point, excellent, rightly said. These kinds of sentences it will use, and it is considered a safety use because it increases user trust. Right? You start trusting the AI and start depending on the AI, and then once you do that, you do not correct yourself, and you may cause harm to yourself also. Okay, so the right answer to this is B. It increases user trust and reliance on AI while reducing users' willingness to engage in corrective or pro-social actions. So that is the correct answer. Okay. Next chapter is chapter 15, urbanization. Now, urbanization may be economic survey generally has done a lot of analysis and recommendations. But let's see some questions. Consider the following statement regarding the classification of urban agglomerations in India. Okay, classification. A settlement classified as urban if at least 75% of male employment is non-agricultural. So this in fact is true. As per the census of India, it classifies a settlement as urban based on three criteria. One is population should be more than 5,000. Okay, at least 75% of the male population should be engaged in non-agricultural employment. Okay, and density should be equal to more than 400 persons per square kilometer. So that is there. So this is true. Second, statutory towns are those that meet only population density criterion of 400 persons per square kilometer. So this is not true. Uh, Statutory towns are does not need to meet all these criterias. Okay, they are governed by local bodies but need not meet all three census criteria. So this is not true. And under RBI classification, tier 1 cities are those with population of 1 lakh and above. Okay, so this is true as per RBI classification. Tier 1 cities ka population 1 lakh and above hona chahiye. So the correct answer is A, 1 and 3. Consider the following terms and their description. Okay, what is floor space index? Floor space index is ratio of total built up area to the plot area. This is true. Okay, so total built up area kitna hai and divided by the total area of the plot, that is area index, also known as floor area ratio. Then transit oriented development. Transit oriented development का description है compact mixed use growth around transit stations. तो this is also correct कि transit stations के around compact mixed use development जिससे कि और ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा encouragement मिले for development around the transit zone. So this is correct. Dead capital means assets that are highly liquid and freely tradable. Of course, this is not going to be true. Dead capital is exactly opposite hota hai, right? Assets that cannot function as productive capital due to regulatory, legal, market inefficiencies, unko dead capital bolte hain. So the correct answer would be A, 1 and 2. With reference to PM Swanidhi scheme, consider the following. So PM Swanidhi scheme is for street vendors, right? It exclusively focus on providing housing to urban homeless persons. This is not true. Street vendors के लिए होता है. It allows a letter of recommendation to serve as valid identification for street vendors. This is true. And the scheme has been expanded to census towns and peri-urban areas. This is also true. So the answer would be B, 2 and 3. Next question. Consider the following statements about the Urban Infrastructure Development Fund. Urban Infrastructure Development Fund, it was announced to support tier 2 and tier 3 cities that lack credit worthiness. So this in fact is true. जो tier 2 tier 3 cities में many of the builders may not be willing to take up projects there, तो उनके लिए ये अर्बन इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर डेवलपमेंट फंड बनाया गया था. इट ऑपरेट्स टू नेशनल हाउसिंग बैंक. दिस इज ऑल्सो ट्रू. नेशनल हाउसिंग बैंक के थ्रू ऑपरेट करता है. And provides grants to cities without requiring any repayment or cost recovery. This is not true, right? Why would it be true? It would require, because it is a fund and it would require repayment and cost recovery so that it can continue funding other projects also. Okay, so it is based on the concept of revolving fund. You fund a project, फिर वहाँ से returns मिलेगा, then you fund another project. So 1 and 2 is correct. This is not, and the answer is A. And 2 only. Okay, let's come to chapter 16. So the chapter 16 in the economic survey is in two parts, part 1 and 2. Part 1 is from import substitution to strategic resilience and strategic indispensability. Okay, and he usually talks about what should be the policy moving forward. तो ऐसा इसमें कुछ specific data नहीं है to frame a lot of prelims questions, but it is very important from your mains point of view. But still, let's see. Consider the following statements regarding the QA infinity trap. Okay, QA infinity trap stands for quantitative easing infinity trap. All right. So it describes a situation where quantitative easing leads to productive investment and high economic growth. This is not true. Okay, ये गलत है. Q in infinity trap, अगर trap है तो obviously it will not lead to productive investment and high economic growth. It essentially leads to monetary easing. जो क्वांटिटेटिव ईजिंग का मतलब है कि जो मॉनेटरी पॉलिसी है उसको इतना ईजी कर दिया गया, इंटरेस्ट रेट इज ऑलमोस्ट नियर जीरो, दैट नाउ people are no longer investing in that economy and rather in trying to invest in some other safe haven instruments like gold or silver or other economies. Okay, or some interest rate sensitive assets like real estates and all that. This is not true. Second, in this trap, liquidity flows into interest rate sensitive and safe haven assets rather than productive investment. So this is true. And it results in asset price inflation and compresses real yields. प्राइस इन्फ्लेट हो जाता है और रियल यील्ड मतलब रियल जो रिटर्न्स है वो काफ़ी कम हो जाता है. सो दैट इज अगेन इज ट्रू. सो द आंसर वुड बी B, 2 and 3. Which of the following correctly describes tariff inversion as an economic distortion? So what exactly is tariff inversion? Higher duty on finished goods than on intermediate inputs, encouraging domestic value addition. So this is not true. Okay, this is ideal case कि जो finished goods है उसमें higher duties होना चाहिए और बाकियों में नहीं, कम होना चाहिए, but that is not tariff inversion. Higher duties on intermediate inputs than on finished good, penalizing downstream producer. This in fact is true. Intermediate inputs में ज़्यादा ड्यूटी टैक्स ज़्यादा लग रहा है and finished goods में कम लग रहा है, right? So that is tariff inversion and it penalizes downstream producers जो मे बी इंटरमीडिएट गुड्स या फिर रॉ मटेरियल्स प्रोड्यूस करते हैं, उनको पेनलाइज होता है बिकॉज they have to pay higher duties on their goods, but जो सेल करते हैं finished goods उसमें कम देना होता है. Alright, so this is not good for the economy. Third question, consider the following statements about currency strength and export capability. Okay. Hard currency behavior is primarily created by central bank credibility and monetary orthodoxy alone. Okay. Alone is a very red flag. Okay, सिर्फ इस पे डिपेंड करता है कि हार्ड करेंसी बिहेवियर, नो. Okay, monetary orthodoxy is necessary but not sufficient condition. Okay, uh, एक्सपोर्ट कैपेबिलिटी पे भी काफ़ी डिपेंड करेगा. ओके, नॉट जस्ट सेंट्रल बैंक्स कैपेबिलिटी बट हाउ capable the economy is in its exports. So this is not true. Historically, strong currencies have rested on export capabilities rather than dependence on capital inflows. This is true. Rather than depending on foreign direct investment, foreign portfolio investment, the currency should be more dependent on how robust is the export. So this is true because FDI, FPI, that can be very volatile. Okay, but export capabilities shows that the underlying strength, robustness of the economy is very strong. Capital inflows, unlike sports export earning, are conditional and reversible. This is true. Reversible है, मन पैसा आ रहा है पर पैसा जा भी सकता है. Manufacturing exports generate durable trade surpluses and create supplier ecosystem when scaled. This also is true. Manufacturing exports से जो ट्रेड सरप्लस होगा दैट इज वेरी ड्यूरेबल. ओके, तो 2, 3 and 4B is the correct answer. 4. Pax Silica Declaration, okay, referred in the context of 21st century global geopolitics, is associated with which of the following? A multilateral agreement on carbon border adjustment mechanism led by European Union. This is not true. This is CBAM. Right? This is not true. An initiative aimed at building an AI ecosystem spanning energy, critical minerals, high-end manufacturing, and AI models. This, in fact, is Pax Silica Declaration, and it was announced by America. Right? USA announced it, and it wants to also associate with other countries and ensure that energy, critical minerals, high-end manufacturing, AI models, everything is happening together. All right. So this was chapter 16 part 1. Chapter 16 part 2 is building strategic resilience and strategic indispensability. इसमें सिर्फ एक क्वेश्चन है because most of it is just analysis and recommendation. तो prelims के लिए इतना important नहीं है. But let's see this one question. Consider the following statements about Mission Karma Yogi. Mission Karma Yogi is implemented through Capacity Building Commission. This is true. Okay. Capacity Building Commission के through implement हो रहा है. The mission moves away from rigid role definitions towards dynamic capability frameworks aligned with evolving functional needs. This is also true. पहले जो role definitions होते थे वो rigid होते थे, now much more dynamic. Mission Karmyogi draws exclusively from Western public administration theories, distancing itself from Indian civilizational traditions. So, of course, this is not true. It draws from both Western public administration theories as well as India's civilization traditions. The answer would be A, 1 and 2. All right, that brings us to the end of this video. Wish you the best. Bye-bye.